To explain in terms your species might understand. In Vakra, she was glad she had. She pulled out a second sandwich and held it up to Kirsch. Hungry? Yes, always hungry. They ate together while the rest of the cafeteria whispered and stared. Maya tried to ignore it. She tried to pretend this was normal. But how could anything be normal when she had 7 warrior aliens guarding her like she was royalty? Across the cafeteria near the herbivore section, a tall reptilian creature watched with calculating eyes. His scales were bright blue and green, and he was not pleased with what he was seeing. Not pleased at all, this cannot stand, he hissed to his companions. A human barely here a month commanding the respect of predator warriors? This disrupts the This disrupts the natural order. This threatens every natural order. This threatens everything we have built. Maya asked. Veskith's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. 5 competitions designed by different species to test strength, intelligence, adaptability, and honor. Each trial showcases the best qualities of the species that designed it. Compete in all 5. If you place respectably in any of them, your status is proven. If you fail, you admit that humans are weak and unworthy of the respect you have been given. Maya's hands were shaking. She was not an athlete. She was not a fighter. She was a 19-year-old biology student who got anxious speaking in front of classes. How could she possibly compete in trials designed by species that had evolved for thousands of years on different worlds with different conditions? But looking at Kirsch at his worried yellow eyes and scared expression, Maya made her decision. Fine, I accept your challenge. When are these trials? 3 days from now, Veskith said. In the central arena. The entire university will watch. Prepare yourself, human. We will show everyone what your species truly is. The 3 Zelkati walked away, their tails swishing behind them in what her translator identified as satisfaction. Maya stood frozen in the hallway as students flowed around her, whispering and staring. What had she just done? Pack sister, Kirsch said quietly. You should not have accepted. The trials are impossible for your species. Each one is designed to favor the species that made it. No single species can succeed at all 5. Then I'll fail trying, Maya said, trying to sound braver than she felt. I can't let your pack be shamed because of me. That night, Shara and the other warriors came to Maya's dorm room. They barely fit in the small space, their large bodies making the room feel tiny. Pip had fled to a friend's room the moment they arrived, too nervous to be around so many predators. You should not have accepted, Shara said, echoing Kirsch's words. The trials are designed to be impossible. They will test you in ways that favor species much stronger and fence. I know, Maya said, but I couldn't refuse. Shara studied Maya for a long moment. Then she made a rumbling sound that might have been approval. You have the spirit of a warrior, even if your body is small and soft. Very well. If you will fight this battle, then we will help you prepare. We have 3 days. Let us not waste them. The next 3 days were the hardest of Maya's life. Shara and the pack taught her everything they could about the other species who would be competing. They explained weaknesses and strengths. They showed her how to observe and adapt. They pushed her to her physical limits and then pushed harder. Torvin was the most helpful. He had studied military tactics and strategy for years. The trials are not about being the strongest, he explained, as Maya collapsed after her 10th lap around the dorm exercise track. They are about being the smartest. Each species will play to their strengths. You must find ways to use their strengths against them. How? Maya gasped, her lungs burning. By being human, Torvin said. Your species evolved on a death world. You survived by being adaptable, by working together, by never giving up. These are your weapons. Use them. Krarsh brought her research materials about the competing species. The Zelkathi were fast and had excellent reflexes. The Korthians were incredibly strong, their silicon-based biology making them nearly indestructible. The Aralis could manipulate air currents and fly. The deepwater Krell could breathe multiple atmosphere types. Each species had evolved perfect adaptations for their homeworld. Humans had evolved to survive everything their terrible planet threw at them. Maya studied late into the nights. She watched videos of previous trials. She read about human evolution, about persistence hunting, about the unique advantages her species had developed. She learned that humans could regulate their temperature through sweating, something most species could not do. She learned that human endurance was legendary, that her ancestors had literally chased prey to death by outlasting them. She learned that humans were generalists, able to adapt to almost any environment rather than specializing in one. On the night before the trials, Maya could not sleep. She stood by her window looking out at the stars, thinking about Earth somewhere out there in the darkness. She thought about her grandfather who had taken her hiking every summer. He had taught her to keep going when her legs hurt and her lungs burned. Pain is temporary, he always said, but giving up lasts forever. Krarsh found her standing there. He sat down beside her without speaking. After a long silence, he said, "Can I tell you something?" "Of course," Maya said. "My family died when I was very young. The pack took me in because Tiara." The central arena of Zenith Collegiate was enormous. Maya stood at the entrance, staring at the massive space that could hold thousands of students. Tiers of seats rose up in circles, already filling with spectators from dozens of species. Floating cameras drifted through the air, recording everything. Her translator informed her that the trials were being broadcast across multiple systems. Millions would watch. Maya wanted to throw up. She wore simple human athletic clothes, stretchy pants, and a light shirt that let her move freely. Compared to the other champions, she looked tiny and underprepared. The Zelkathi wore scaled armor. The Korthian was a walking mountain of silicon-based muscle. The Aralis had wings that spanned 3 meters. The deepwater Krell wore a moisture suit that kept their skin wet. And then there was Maya. Small, soft, scared Maya Chen from Earth. Shara and the pack stood behind her in the preparation area. Krarsh bounced nervously at her side. "You can still withdraw," Shara said quietly. "No one would fault you." "Yes, they would," Maya said. "And I'd fault myself. Let's get this over with." A voice boomed across the arena in multiple languages. The announcer explained the rules. 5 trials, each designed by a different species. Points awarded based on placement. The champion with the most total points would win overall. But respect would be given to anyone who placed well in any trial. It was possible to lose while still proving your worth. Maya hoped she could at least do that much. The first trial was the Zelkathi maze. A 3-dimensional structure materialized in the center of the arena, all shifting walls and moving platforms and obstacles that changed position. The goal was simple: reach the center and ring the bell. The fastest time won. Veskith stepped up to the starting line with Maya and 3 other champions. His scales gleamed in the arena lights. He looked at Maya with cold eyes and said nothing. He did not need to. His presence said enough. The starting signal sounded. Veskith launched forward like a bolt of lightning. The other champions followed, each using their species' natural advantages. Maya ran after them, her human legs pumping as fast as they could. Within seconds, she had lost sight of all of them. The maze was designed for speed and reflexes. Walls shifted just as you reached them. Platforms dropped away under your feet. Obstacles swung out from hidden panels. It was chaos and confusion, and Maya was completely lost within the first minute. But Maya had spent 3 days studying recordings of this trial. She had learned something important. The maze had patterns. The walls shifted in sequences. The obstacles followed timing mechanisms. If you were fast enough, you did not need to learn the patterns. But if you were slower, you could use them. Maya stopped running blindly. She pulled out a marker from her pocket and made a quick symbol on the wall. Then she moved carefully, watching the walls, counting the seconds between shifts. When a wall moved, she marked the new position. When a platform dropped, she noted how long before it returned. The other champions were already finishing. She could hear bells ringing in the distance. But Maya kept working, mapping the maze as she went. It was slow and frustrating, but it was what humans did. They observed. They learned. They adapted. When Maya finally reached the center and rang the bell, she finished third out of 5 champions. Veskith had won with a blistering time, but Maya had not come in last, and more importantly, she had shown human problem-solving in action. The crowd murmured with surprise. The small human had not collapsed in failure. She had found her own way through. The second trial was the Corthian strength test. Massive weighted blocks set on one side of the arena. Champions had to move them to the other side. The Corthian champion picked up his block like it weighed nothing and walked it across. Other champions struggled and strained. Maya looked at her assigned block. It was as tall as she was and probably weighed more than a small car. She tried to lift it. It did not move even slightly. She tried to push it, nothing. She tried to pull it. Still nothing. The crowd began to laugh. Not cruel laughter, but the kind of laughter that comes when something is absurd. A tiny human trying to move a block that even strong species struggled with. It was comical. Maya sat down and thought. The rules said the blocks had to be moved to the other side. They did not say how. They did not say you had to carry them. They just had to be moved. She stood up and examined the arena floor. It was smooth and slightly slanted. She examined the block's shape. It was rectangular with rounded edges. And then Maya smiled. She went to the equipment storage at the edge of the arena and found what she was looking for. Maintenance tools, including a long metal bar. She brought the bar back to her block and wedged it underneath one edge. Then she used the principle of leverage that her grandfather had taught her during their hikes when they needed to move fallen logs. The block tilted up onto one edge. Maya pushed and it began to roll. Not quickly, not easily, but it moved. She rolled it across the arena floor, using physics and simple machines instead of raw strength. It took her 3 times as long as anyone else, but she got her block to the other side. She finished 4th out of 5. But the crowd was not laughing anymore. They were talking excitedly. The human had used her brain to overcome her weakness. She had turned a strength test into a puzzle and solved it. Death Worlder ingenuity, they called it. The ability to look at a problem and find solutions that others missed. The third trial was the atmospheric challenge. Competitors had to complete tasks in chambers with different atmospheres, temperatures, and pressures. Each champion would face the environment most opposite to their home world. For the Auralis, a high-pressure water chamber. For the Krell, a dry heat environment. For Maya, they chose a chamber with thin air, high heat, and low humidity. Most species were adapted for specific environments. Their bodies worked best in conditions similar to their homeworld. Too much deviation and they became weak and sluggish. But humans had evolved as persistence hunters who chased prey across deserts and mountains, and every environment their terrible planet offered. Human bodies could adapt. Maya stepped into the chamber. The heat hit her like a physical blow. The air was so thin she could barely breathe. Other champions had already started failing their challenges. The Corthian could not function in high cold. The Auralis struggled in heavy gravity. Species built for one perfect environment could not handle extremes. But Maya's body did something amazing. She started to sweat. The moisture evaporating from her skin cooled her body. A biological adaptation that few other species possessed. Her lungs worked harder, pulling what oxygen they could from the thin air. Her heart rate increased, pumping blood and oxygen more efficiently. Her human body, built by millions of years of surviving Earth's chaos, adapted in real time. The task was to assemble a complex puzzle while in the chamber. Maya's hands shook from the heat and thin air. Her head pounded from altitude sickness, but she kept working, piece by piece, step by step, never stopping, never giving up. The human way. When she finished and stumbled out of the chamber, gasping and drenched in sweat, the timer showed she had beaten everyone except the Krell, whose species specialized in multi-environment adaptation. 2nd place. A human had won her first medal. The crowd erupted. Even species that had avoided Maya in the cafeteria were cheering. She had proven that humans were not just clever, they were physically special too. Their adaptability was not just mental, it was built into their very biology. The 4th trial was the endurance hunt, a 20-kilometer course with obstacles designed to test stamina over pure speed. Most species were built for explosive power, quick sprints, fast reactions, short bursts of incredible ability. This made sense for survival. Chase prey quickly or run from predators fast. But humans had evolved differently. Humans had evolved to chase prey for hours, to track animals until they collapsed from exhaustion. To run at a steady pace that never stopped, never slowed, just kept going until nothing else could keep going. Persistence hunting. The uniquely human ability to simply outlast everything else. The starting signal fired. Champions burst forward at incredible speeds. The Zelkathi shot ahead. The Aerolus flew above obstacles. The Korthian crashed through barriers. Maya started at a steady jog. Within 5 kilometers, the faster species began to slow. Their muscles burned lactic acid. Their bodies overheated. They had sprinted too hard, too fast. They needed to stop and recover. But Maya just kept jogging. Her breathing was steady. Her pace never changed. She passed the Aerolus, who had landed to rest, wings cramping from overuse. She passed the Korthian, who had overheated and needed to cool down. At kilometer 15, only 3 champions were still moving. The deepwater Krell was ahead. Their species, built for long-distance swimming, translated well to endurance. Veskith was second, pushing himself through sheer willpower and pride. And Maya was third, still jogging at the same steady pace she had started with. At kilometer 18, Veskith collapsed. His reptilian biology could not sustain the effort. His body simply shut down. He would recover, but he was done. That left Maya and the Krell. The final 2 kilometers were agony. Every muscle in Maya's body screamed. Her lungs burned. Her feet were blistered inside her shoes. Her body begged her to stop, to rest, to give up. But Maya thought about her grandfather's words. Pain is temporary. Giving up lasts forever. She thought about Kirsch's yellow eyes trusting her. Maya woke up in the medical center with no memory of how she had gotten there. Her body ached in ways she had not known were possible. Every muscle screamed protest when she tried to move. Her translator implant was buzzing with hundreds of messages, but she ignored them all. She just wanted to sleep for a week. You are awake. Good. Shara's deep voice came from beside the bed. The large Vakrian sat in a chair that looked far too small for her massive frame. You collapsed after the trials. We carried you here. The doctors say you are fine, just exhausted. Humans apparently push their bodies to dangerous limits. Did I win? Maya asked, her voice rough. You placed in every trial. You won the respect of every species present. You showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. Does it matter that Veskith scored more points overall? Maya thought about it and smiled. No, I guess it doesn't. Then rest, Pack Sister. You have earned it. But rest was hard to come by. Over the next few hours, a steady stream of visitors arrived. Kirsch brought her favorite foods from Earth that he had somehow found in the station's massive storage. Pip came with flowers and apologies for being scared. Students she had never met stopped by to congratulate her or ask for autographs. The university chancellor himself visited, speaking formally about how proud the institution was to have her. The most surprising visitor came in the evening. Veskith entered the medical room, his bright scales somehow looking less intimidating in the soft light. He approached Maya's bed and stood silently for a moment before speaking. I must apologize, he said stiffly. I challenged you out of pride and prejudice. I believed humans were using tricks to gain status they had not earned. I was wrong. Your species may be young in the stars, but you possess qualities that many older species have lost. You have my respect, Maya-Chen, and my friendship if you will accept it. Maya looked at the reptilian who had caused her so much stress and saw genuine regret in his eyes. She thought about holding a grudge, but that seemed pointless now. Friends don't usually try to humiliate each other in public trials, but I guess we can start fresh. Apology accepted. Veskith's posture relaxed visibly. Thank you. And I must tell you something else. Earth's ambassadors are very pleased with you. Your trials were broadcast across multiple systems. Billions watched you compete. Already dozens of species have requested formal meetings with human representatives. Your performance has changed how the galaxy views your people. I just didn't want to let my friends down, Maya said quietly. That is precisely why it worked, Veskith replied. You did not compete for glory or status. You competed for others. That is a very human thing, I think. And it is beautiful. After Veskith left, Shara returned with news. The pack has made a decision. We wish to formally adopt you as blood sister. Not just the oath of protection, but true pack membership. This is rare, very rare. No off-worlder has ever been offered this honor. Maya felt tears in her eyes. What does that mean? It means you are family. It means you will always have a place with us. It means we will defend you, teach you, guide you as one of our own, and in return you will honor the pack and help us grow stronger. Shara's yellow eyes were soft. You already do this last part. You have made Krish stronger. You have reminded us what true alpha kindness looks like. Will you accept? Yes, Maya said without hesitation. I would be honored. The ceremony happened 3 days later in the central arena, the same place where Maya had competed. But this time the atmosphere was celebratory rather than competitive. The Vakrian pack gathered in the center, all wearing ceremonial gear. Maya wore a simple white robe that Krish had helped her pick out. Shara spoke in ancient Vakrian, her voice carrying across the arena. Maya's translator worked overtime to convert the archaic language. The words spoke of honor and family, of bonds stronger than blood, of choosing to stand together against the darkness. Each pack member came forward and placed a claw on Maya's shoulder, speaking a personal oath. When Krish's turn came, he could barely speak through his emotion. You saved me when I was nothing. You showed me I could be something. You are the best sister I could ever have. I swear to protect you, learn from you, and make you proud. Maya hugged him tight, not caring about ceremony or tradition. You already make me proud, little brother. The ceremony ended with Shara presenting Maya with a pack token, a small carved piece of stone worn on a cord. You are Kesh Maya now, kindness bringer. May you always carry that name with honor. The changes came quickly after that. Maya's experience at Zenith Collegiate transformed completely. The cafeteria, once divided into rigid sections, began to blur. Students who had never spoken to each other started sitting together, curious about different species and cultures. Maya's table became a neutral meeting ground where anyone could sit. Predator species students taught herbivores about their cultures, breaking down centuries of fear and misunderstanding. Omnivores like Maya found themselves as bridges between worlds, helping translate not just language but customs and perspectives. The strict social hierarchies that had governed the university for generations started to crack. Not everyone was happy about the changes. Some traditional students complained that the old ways were being destroyed. Some species felt uncomfortable with the mixing. But slowly, steadily, the momentum of change could not be stopped. And at the center of it all was a small human girl who had just wanted to help a hungry kid. Maya's classes became easier too. Other students actually talked to her now, forming study groups and sharing notes. Her xenobiology professor asked her to present a lecture on human evolution and adaptation, which became so popular, it had to be moved to a larger hall. She was even invited to join several academic clubs and social organizations. But the biggest change was personal. Maya was no longer lonely. She had Krish, who followed her everywhere like a shadow and made her laugh with his enthusiasm for learning about Earth. She had the pack, who taught her Vakrian customs and invited her to their gatherings. She had Veskith, who turned out to be funny and intelligent once you got past his formal exterior. She had Pip, who slowly overcame fear and became a good friend. She had classmates from dozens of species, each one teaching her something new about the galaxy. One afternoon, about a month after the trials, Maya sat in the cafeteria with a mixed group of students. A Korthian was explaining silicon-based biology to two herbivores who listened with fascination. And Eralis was teaching Krish how to calculate wind resistance for better flight dynamics. Veskith was arguing good-naturedly with another reptilian about philosophy. And Maya sat in the middle of it all, eating her sandwich and smiling. Shara approached the table, which had become a common sight. But this time she carried a data pad with official-looking documents. Maya, I have news from Earth. The table went quiet. Maya looked up, suddenly nervous. What kind of news? Your government has received over 100 requests for human exchange students from other universities across the galaxy. They are expanding the program significantly. More humans will be coming to the stars and many will be coming here to Zenith Collegiate. Shara's expression was amused. It seems you have made humanity very popular. Maya felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride that she had helped her species. Excitement that more humans would experience what she had. But also a small possessiveness about her found family and the community she had built. When are they coming? The first group arrives in 2 weeks. 50 human students, the largest off-world group Earth has ever sent. Shara tilted her head. The Chancellor has asked if you would help orient them. Show them how to navigate galactic society. Teach them what you have learned. Maya looked around her table at the diverse group of friends she had somehow gathered. She thought about how lonely and scared she had been just 2 months ago. She thought about all the mistakes she had made and the lessons she had learned. She thought about what she could teach the new students so they would not have to struggle the way she had. Yes, Maya said, I'll help them. But they need to learn something important right away. What is that? Fesketh asked. That the galaxy isn't about species or status or who is strongest. It's about seeing people who need help and choosing to help them anyway. It's about finding family in unexpected places. It's about being kind even when it's hard. Maya smiled. It's about being human, which means being caring, stubborn, adaptable, and maybe a little bit crazy. Kirsch laughed, his tail wagging. That is the best description of humans I have ever heard. The group at the table agreed, each in their own way. And as they went back to their conversations and meals, Maya reflected on her journey. She had come to Zenith Collegiate as a lonely student who just wanted to study alien life. She had ended up teaching the galaxy about human values instead. Later that evening, Maya stood by her dorm window, looking out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, impossibly far away, but somehow closer than it had ever felt. She had changed since arriving at this station. She had grown stronger, braver. The emergency session of the Galactic Concordat had been going for 6 hours, and nothing had changed. The holographic display in the center of the grand chamber showed the same terrible truth it had shown that morning. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease, each one representing a world conquered by the Krithak Dominion. 47 species had seats in this council chamber. 12 of those species no longer had homeworlds to return to. Ambassador Velnara stood at the center podium, her forearms gesturing in a pattern that her species used to show deep distress. Her compound eyes reflected the red glow of the display as she watched another admiral present another plan. And that would not work. The Dominion had more than 10,000 warships. The Concordat had perhaps 8,000, and half of those were damaged or pinned down defending critical systems. Admiral Thexul was speaking now, his reptilian face set in grim determination. We must consolidate our forces at the Hadrian defense line. If we fall back to a tighter perimeter, we can hold them for perhaps 6 months, long enough to build more ships. 6 months to build ships that will face the same fate as the ones we have already lost. Someone muttered from the gallery above. Velnara wanted to disagree, but she could not. The Krithak ships were massive, some of them 15 kilometers long. They carried thousands of warriors and enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The Concordat ships were impressive too, most of them ranging from 2 to 8 kilometers in length. But the Dominion had numbers and they had momentum, and they had 400 years of conquest behind them. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Velnara's assistant, a young human named Sarah Chen, appeared on a smaller display near her station. Humans were the newest members of the Concordat, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 12 years ago. They were an odd species, short-lived and energetic, but pleasant enough. Their single representative on the council rarely spoke during military discussions. Ambassador, we have a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Helena Voss requests to address the council. Velnara felt a flutter of hope, then immediately suppressed it. Earth had 3 star systems under their control and a modest merchant fleet. What could they possibly offer? Still, courtesy demanded she accept all offers of assistance. Put her through. The holographic display shifted and a human woman appeared. She wore a dark blue uniform with silver insignia on the shoulders. Her hair was gray and pulled back severely, and her eyes were the color of Earth's oceans. She looked old by human standards, perhaps 60 of their short years. Members of the Concordat, I am Admiral Helena Voss, commander of humanity's 3rd Fleet. We have been monitoring the situation with the Krithak Dominion. Earth wishes to offer military assistance. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then someone laughed. It was a bitter sound, not meant to be cruel but full of despair. Velnara spoke quickly, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. Admiral Voss, humanity's support is deeply appreciated. However, this conflict requires massive military assets. Perhaps Earth could assist with refugee transport or medical supplies? We are offering military assets, Ambassador. Voss did not seem offended. Her expression remained calm, almost neutral. The 3rd Fleet is ready to deploy immediately. We await only your coordinates. Another admiral, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, spoke up. With respect, Admiral, We have reviewed Earth's naval registry. You have approximately 90 vessels total across all your fleets. We face an enemy with 10,000. 87 operational vessels in Third Fleet specifically, Voss corrected. Our largest ship is 400 meters long. I understand how this appears. The Crystal Admiral's light pulsed in a pattern that indicated sympathy. Your courage is commendable, but this is not a conflict that can be won with courage alone. Velnara pulled up Earth's naval specifications on her private screen. The numbers were worse than she had imagined. Destroyers barely 200 meters long, frigates even smaller. Their largest vessels, which they called battleships, would be dwarfed by even a standard Concordat cruiser. She had seen civilian cargo haulers with more mass than these warships. Perhaps, she said carefully, Earth's forces would be better suited to defensive operations, protecting your own systems, ensuring the Dominion does not threaten human space. Admiral Voss smiled slightly. It was not a happy expression. Ambassador, if the Concordat falls, Earth falls with it. We know this. The Dominion does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They conquer. We would rather fight beside you now than wait to fight alone later. Thexel leaned forward, his clawed hands gripping the edge of his console. Your spirit is admirable, human. But you must understand, the Dominion's smallest warship is larger than your largest. Their shields can withstand sustained bombardment from weapons that would reduce your vessels to atoms. This is not cowardice I speak, but simple mathematics. I understand mathematics quite well, Admiral, Voss replied. And I understand war. We're not asking for a key strategic position. We're not asking for glory. We're asking for coordinates and permission to engage the enemy. The chamber filled with the sound of a dozen species, all trying to speak at once. Velnara raised two of her arms for silence. The Council appreciates Earth's willingness to join this fight. However, I must be frank. We cannot afford to waste resources recovering human casualties when your fleet is destroyed. It would be a tragedy and a strategic burden. Then assign us somewhere the tragedy will be minimized, Voss said quietly. Give us the least critical front. The furthest position, somewhere we can at least delay the enemy while you consolidate your real forces. Velnara looked at the star map. The Hadrian defense line had 17 positions. 15 were critical choke points that absolutely had to hold. One was a moderately important system with civilian populations, and one was essentially empty space near a gas giant, important only because it represented a gap in the line. Very well, Velnara said. Third Fleet is assigned to position Hadrian 7. A fleet will be dispatched to support you. But please understand, Admiral Voss, that we expect the Dominion to break through your position within days of contact. Use that time to evacuate your personnel and fall back. Understood, Ambassador. Third Fleet will deploy immediately. Expect us in 6 weeks. The transmission ended. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Thexul spoke, his voice heavy with regret. They are brave. I wish we could save them. They are fools, another admiral muttered. Sending ships that small against the Dominion is suicide. Velnara returned to her private chamber after the session ended. Sarah Chen was waiting with a cup of tea, a human custom that Velnara had grown fond of. I heard the transmission, the young woman said quietly. For what it's worth, Admiral Voss doesn't make mistakes. If she's taking the fleet in, she has a reason. The reason is that your species is too young to understand what they face, Velnara said, but her voice was gentle. I do not want to see humanity destroyed, Sarah. You have so much potential. Maybe that's why we're going, Sarah replied. Because we don't know enough to be afraid yet. Velnara sipped her tea and looked at the star map on her personal display. 6 weeks until the human fleet arrived. 6 weeks until she would have to write a memorial for an entire species that had been too brave for their own good. The red markers of Dominion conquest seemed to pulse like a heartbeat on the display. She wondered if humans understood what those red markers meant. Each one was millions of dead. Each one was a civilization erased. Each one was a battle that had been lost despite the best efforts of species far older and more powerful than humanity. But they were coming anyway. Such small ships, such a tiny fleet, such incredible foolishness. Velnara felt one of her hearts ache with sadness. She had liked the humans in the short time she had known them. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a flash of blue light that scattered across the void like dying stars. Admiral Thexul watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will, as 87 tiny ships took position near the gas giant. His tactical officer had helpfully overlaid size comparisons on the display. The largest human vessel was barely larger than one of his fighter craft. They looked like toys, his weapons officer muttered. Thexul did not reprimand him. It was true. The human destroyers were sleek things, all angles and armor plating, but they were so small. His own fleet consisted of 300 ships, including 20 cruisers, that massed more than all the human vessels combined. And he knew with grim certainty that his fleet was not enough to hold this position. "Open a channel to the human commander," he ordered. Admiral Voss appeared on his screen. She looked tired, as if the 6-week journey had aged her. Humans always seemed tired to Thexul. Their lifespans were so short that perhaps they were always racing against time. "Admiral Thexul, 3rd Fleet reporting for duty. Admiral Voss, welcome to Hadrian 7. He tried to keep the pity from his voice. "Our scouts report enemy movement. The Dominion is sending a fleet to this sector. 600 ships, mostly cruisers and heavy carriers. They will arrive in approximately 8 hours. He watched Voss carefully, waiting for the fear to show. Instead, she nodded once, as if he had told her the weather forecast. 600. "What's your battle plan, Admiral?" "Standard defensive formation. We will form a line between the enemy and the gas giant's orbital stations. We hold as long as possible, then execute a fighting retreat toward the inner system." He paused. "Admiral Voss, I must be honest. Against 600 Dominion ships, we cannot win. We can only delay them." "Understood. Where do you want my ships?" Thexul had thought about this during the long wait for the human fleet to arrive. He did not want to watch them die in the first volley. "Take position behind my formation. When we begin our retreat, you will have advance warning. Use that time to escape." "Negative, Admiral." Voss leaned forward slightly. 3rd Fleet will take the right flank. We'll maintain a loose formation at 15,000 kilometers from your line. Admiral Voss, the right flank will receive heavy fire. Your ships will manage. 3rd Fleet out. The transmission ended. Thexul stared at the empty screen. Beside him, his first officer made a sound of frustration. "Stubborn. They do not understand what they face." "No," Thexul agreed quietly. "They do not." 8 hours later, the Dominion fleet arrived. They came in a formation that had broken 100 worlds. A massive wedge of ships, each one broadcasting its power and dominance. The smallest was 3 kilometers long. The largest stretched nearly 8 kilometers, its hull covered in weapons ports that glowed with ready fire. The Dominion commander's message was simple. "Surrender or die." Thexul gave the only answer he could. "We stand." The battle began as it always did. The Dominion ships advanced in formation, their shields shimmering with power. Thexul's fleet opened fire, long-range particle beams and missile volleys that lit up the void. The Dominion ships returned fire, and space became a storm of energy and explosions. Then the human fleet moved, and everything Thexul thought he knew about space combat stopped making sense. The human ships scattered. There was no other word for it. One moment they were in a loose formation, the next they were everywhere, moving in patterns that seemed random but somehow coordinated. His tactical display struggled to track them. "Sir, the human fleet is breaking formation," his tactical officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. "I can see that," Thexul growled. "Were they fleeing already?" But no, they were moving toward the enemy, not away. Just not in any formation he recognized. Then the human ships opened fire, and Thexul understood that war had changed. The humans did not use energy weapons. Instead, they fired solid projectiles, thousands of them, tiny pieces of metal that his sensors barely registered. The projectiles moved at impossible speeds, nearly a fraction of light speed. They should have been easy to dodge, but there were so many of them, and they came from so many angles. A Dominion cruiser's shields flared as hundreds of tungsten rounds hammered into it. The shields held for perhaps 3 seconds, then collapsed. The rounds punched through the hull like it was paper. Atmosphere vented. Secondary explosions rippled along the ship's length. "By the ancestors," someone whispered. The human ships did not stay still long enough to be targeted. They moved in ways that should have turned their crews into paste. 40 gravities of acceleration, 50 more. They curved and twisted through space like living things. A human destroyer, barely 200 meters long, slipped past a Dominion battleship's weapons fire and launched something. "Torpedoes," his tactical officer said. "But sir, they're not flying straight. They're maneuvering independently." Thexul watched as 20 torpedoes spread out, then converged on a single Dominion ship from different angles. The enemy's defensive guns destroyed half of them, but the rest got through. The explosions were not large, but they were precise. Each torpedo struck a critical system. Engines, weapons, command deck. The Dominion ship went dark and began to drift. "How many ships have the humans destroyed?" Thexel demanded. 17 confirmed kills, sir. Another 30 with critical damage. His tactical officer's voice was shaking. "Sir, they've been fighting for 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Thexul's fleet had destroyed 9 enemy ships in the same time, and they had 300 vessels to the humans' 87. He looked at the tactical display again, really looked at it. The human ships were not just fighting. They were hunting. A pack of human frigates surrounded a Dominion carrier. They fired from all sides, never staying in one place, never giving the carrier a clean shot. The carrier's shields failed. The carrier exploded. The human ships were already moving to their next target before the debris finished expanding. Admiral Voss's voice came over the command channel, calm and professional. "All units go weapons free. Remember, there are no points for second place. Hunt them down, hunt them down. Not fight, not engage. Hunt." The Dominion commander tried to reform his fleet, tried to establish a defensive line, but the human ships would not let him. They struck at his flanks, at his rear, at any ship that separated from the group even slightly. They fired those terrible railguns that moved too fast to dodge and torpedoes that thought for themselves. 3 hours into the battle, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. They had lost more than 200 ships. Thexul's fleet had lost 18. The human fleet had lost 7, but the survivors showed damage. One destroyer was leaking atmosphere from a dozen breaches but still firing its weapons. The Dominion ships ran, and the human ships chased them, still firing, still hunting, until they reached the edge of sensor range. When it was over, Thexul sat in his command chair and tried to understand what he had just witnessed. His first officer stood beside him, all forearms hanging limply in shock. "Sir, what were those tactics?" "I do not know," Thexul admitted. "I have fought in 40 engagements. I have never seen anything like that." "They fought without honor," the weapons officer said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They did not give the enemy a chance to surrender. They struck from behind, from the sides. They destroyed ships that were already crippled. They fought to win," Thexul corrected quietly. He opened a channel to Admiral Voss. The human woman appeared on his screen, a cut on her forehead leaking blood. Her uniform was scorched on one side. "Admiral Voss, my fleet thanks you for your assistance." "Just doing our job, Admiral." She wiped blood from her eye. "We'll need 6 hours for damage control, then we'll be ready for the next wave." "The next wave," Thexul repeated. "You expect them to return?" "They will. We hurt them, but we didn't break them. When they come back, they'll bring more ships." She smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator. "Let them come. We'll be ready." The transmission ended. Thexul turned to his first officer. "Send a message to Ambassador Velnara. Tell her the human fleet has engaged the enemy and achieved victory. Tell her—" He paused, searching for words. "Tell her we were wrong about them." "What should we tell her about their tactics, sir?" Thexul looked at the tactical display, at the debris field that stretched for thousands of kilometers, at the markers showing where 87 tiny ships had broken an enemy fleet 6 times their number. "Tell her the humans do not fight like anyone we have ever known. And tell her we may actually survive this war." The message reached the Kruthak Dominion's High Command 3 days after the defeat at Hadrian 7. Grand Admiral Vorketh read the report twice, certain there had been an error in the transmission. 600 ships reduced to 380 by a force 1/7 their size. It was impossible. It was also true. He studied the tactical recordings, watching the small human ships dart and weave through his fleet like insects. No, not insects. Insects were fragile. These ships moved with purpose and precision. They moved like predators. "What species are these humans?" he demanded. His intelligence officer brought up the file. "Newcomers, Grand Admiral. They achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. They control 3-star systems. Their military is estimated at fewer than 100 vessels total." "That estimate is clearly wrong," Vorketh said coldly. He watched another recording of human torpedoes hunting a Dominion cruiser. Watched them coordinate their attack like a pack of living creatures. "Prepare the 8th Battle Group. 1,200 ships, including 3 world breakers. We will crush these humans and make an example of them." "Target, Grand Admiral?" Vorketh smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. They defend the mining colony at Outpost Tarsus. 4 million civilians. Let us see how brave they are when they must choose between fighting and saving innocents. Send the fleet. Outpost Tarsus orbited a red dwarf star, surrounded by an asteroid belt rich in rare metals. Admiral Helena Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UNS Defiant, and looked at the tactical situation. It was bad. The concordate forces in the system were already evacuating civilians, their massive transport ships struggling to load refugees fast enough. Admiral Thexul appeared on her communication screen. After the battle at Hadrian 7, he had been reassigned to coordinate with her fleet. Admiral Voss, our scouts confirm the enemy fleet composition. 1,200 ships. We cannot win this fight. We must complete the evacuation and retreat. How long until the evacuation is complete? 72 hours at current rate. The enemy will arrive in 48. Voss nodded slowly, her mind already working through the problem. Then we buy you 24 hours. Keep loading those transports, Admiral. Admiral Voss, I must protest. Your fleet cannot hold against 1,200 ships, and they are bringing world breakers. Those vessels are designed to destroy planets. Your largest ship would fit inside one of their cargo bays. I understand the math, Admiral. Third Fleet is staying. You have your orders. Thexul's reptilian features showed an emotion Voss had learned to recognize, frustration mixed with respect. You are either the bravest human I have met or the most insane. Maybe both, Voss said with a tired smile. We'll find out in 48 hours. She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. Get me Commander Park from the Engineering Corps, and I want complete mining surveys of this asteroid field. Every rock bigger than a shuttle. I want to know where it is and what it's made of. Her first officer, Commander Sarah Chen, raised an eyebrow. Sarah was young, barely 30, but she had proven herself in the last battle. What are you planning, Admiral? We're going to do what humans do best, Commander. We're going to cheat. For the next 48 hours, the human fleet worked without rest. Engineering crews in spacesuits moved through the asteroid field, attaching small devices to carefully selected rocks. Mining charges, normally used for extracting ore, were repurposed and networked together. Navigation buoys were hacked and reprogrammed. Civilian mining equipment was hauled up from the colony and converted into weapons. Commander Park, a stocky woman with grease-stained hands, reported to Voss on the bridge. Admiral, we've placed 8,000 mines throughout the field. They're linked to a central control system. We can detonate them in any pattern you want. We've also got 50 fusion reactors from the colony rigged as improvised energy weapons. They'll get one shot each before they melt down, but that one shot will hurt. What about the asteroid positioning? Trickier. We've attached maneuvering thrusters to 300 large asteroids. We can move them, but not quickly. Think of them as very slow missiles. Voss studied the tactical display. The asteroid field surrounded Outpost Tarsus like a shell. Millions of rocks from pebbles to mountains. The perfect place to hide surprises. Good work, Commander. Now get some sleep. You'll need to be sharp when this starts. The Krethak Dominion fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 1,200 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation meant to inspire terror. 3 Worldbreaker-class dreadnoughts led the fleet, each one 20 kilometers of armor and weapons. They were not built for speed or elegance. They were built to destroy civilizations. Grand Admiral Vorketh broadcast his message to the colony. Humans of Outpost Tarsus, you have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will will be reduced to ash. Your species will learn what happens to those who defy us. Admiral Voss responded calmly. This is Admiral Helena Voss of the United Nations of Earth. Your terms are rejected. If you want this colony, come and take it. Vorketh felt a flash of anger at the insolence. As you wish. Fleet advance. Destroy everything. The Dominion fleet moved into the asteroid field, confidently pushing through the rocks. Their shields were strong enough to shrug off any natural debris. Their sensors swept ahead, looking for the human fleet. They found nothing. The asteroid field appeared empty except for rocks and mining equipment. Where are they hiding? Vorketh demanded. Then space exploded around him. Thousands of mines detonated simultaneously. Not randomly, but in carefully timed patterns. Each explosion sent debris flying at tremendous speeds. Asteroids shattered and their fragments became projectiles. The fragments hit shields, weakening them. More mines detonated. More debris flew. The chain reaction spread through the fleet like wildfire. A Dominion cruiser's shields failed under the constant bombardment. A chunk of asteroid the size of a building punched through its hull. The ship broke in half, Evasive maneuvers. Vorketh shouted, but it was too late. The fleet was deep in the asteroid field now, and the rocks themselves had become weapons. Navigation buoys hacked by human engineers broadcast false coordinates. Ships that relied on those coordinates suddenly found themselves on collision courses with asteroids. Then the human ships appeared, emerging from hiding places among the larger asteroids. They had been there all along, cold and silent, waiting. Now they attacked from a dozen directions at once, their railguns firing, their torpedoes launching. They struck at damaged ships, at vessels whose shields were already weakened by the debris storm. A human frigate, tiny compared to its target, accelerated straight toward a world-breaker-class dreadnought. Vorketh watched in disbelief as the small ship ignored all defensive fire, ignored common sense, and rammed directly into the dreadnought's engine section at tremendous speed. The collision should have been meaningless. The dreadnought was so large, so massive, but the human ship hit precisely where it needed to, and it was moving at nearly a tenth of light speed. The impact destroyed the dreadnought's engines and set off a chain reaction in its fuel systems. The massive ship began to list, powerless. Did they just suicide ram us? Vorketh's weapons officer asked in shock. Negative, the sensor officer reported. The crew evacuated in escape pods 3 seconds before impact. They're already being picked up by another human ship. They had planned it. They had calculated exactly when to abandon ship, exactly where to hit, exactly what would happen. Vorketh felt something he had not felt in decades of conquest. He felt afraid. The battle raged for 18 hours. The human fleet used every trick they could devise. Makeshift weapons on the colony's surface fired at ships passing overhead, crippling 2 more dreadnoughts. Human destroyers lured Dominion ships into carefully positioned ambushes. Torpedoes worked in groups to overwhelm defenses. Nothing was wasted. Every shot had a purpose. When Vorketh finally ordered a retreat, he had lost 814 ships. The human fleet had lost 34 vessels, but they had won. The transports had finished evacuating. The colony was safe. 4 million civilians were alive because 87 tiny ships had refused to surrender. Admiral Thexel arrived with reinforcements 3 hours after the battle ended. He found the human fleet still active, still alert, salvaging what they could from their damaged ships. Admiral Voss looked exhausted when she appeared on his screen. Her uniform was torn. She had burns on her arms, but she was smiling. Evacuation complete, Admiral. The colony is empty. You can move in your repair ships. Admiral Voss, I have no words. What you have accomplished here? We did what needed to be done, Voss interrupted gently. That's all. But Admiral, I need to request immediate resupply. We're low on torpedoes and railgun ammunition. And we need engineers. A lot of our ships are held together with emergency welds and hope. Thexul looked at the tactical recordings, at the debris field that stretched through the entire asteroid belt. Ships held together with welds and hope had just defeated a fleet 15 times their size. I will send everything you need. But please, Admiral, your crews must rest. Rest later. War now. Voss straightened despite her obvious exhaustion. Besides, I think we made them angry. Ambassador Velnara had not slept in 3 days. She stood in her private office, staring at the reports from Outpost Tarsus, reading them over and over because they could not possibly be real. 87 ships. 1,200 enemy vessels. The humans had won. Not just survived, but won decisively. It defied everything she understood about warfare. Ambassador, you asked to see me? Sarah Chen stood in the doorway holding a data pad. The young human liaison looked as tired as Velnara felt. Yes. Sarah, I need you to explain something to me. How did they do it? Your fleet is so small, your ships are so tiny. Yet you have now defeated 2 enemy fleets that should have destroyed you easily. What am I missing? Sarah sat down, setting her data pad on the desk. Permission to speak freely, Ambassador? Always. You've been measuring us wrong. You look at our ships and see how small they are. You count our fleet and see how few vessels we have. You think we're weak? Sarah leaned forward. But you're asking the wrong questions. You should be asking why we build ships that way. You should be asking where we learn to fight. Velnara felt her primary arms gesture in confusion. Then tell me. Make me understand. The Concordate species, all of you, you developed space travel and then you figured out space combat, right? You took what you knew about fighting and adapted it to 3 dimensions and 0 gravity. Yes, of course. That is the natural progression. Sarah shook her head. Earth did it differently. We mastered 3-dimensional combat before we ever left our planet. How? Your planet is 2-dimensional. Land and air, and ocean. 71% of Earth's surface is covered in water, and humans have been fighting on, under, and around that water for thousands of years. Sarah pulled up images on her datapad. Submarine warfare, Admiral. Ships that hide beneath the waves, that strike without warning, that hunt in packs. We've been perfecting those tactics for 400 years. Velnara looked at the images. Strange vessels moving through blue water. I do not understand. What does water combat have to do with space? Everything. In water, you move in 3 dimensions. You deal with pressure and temperature gradients. You hide in terrain. You use sonar instead of sight. You coordinate with vessels you can't see. You attack from unexpected angles. Sarah smiled. Space combat? That's just submarine warfare with a bigger ocean. Velnara sat down slowly, her mind racing. She pulled up the tactical recordings from Hadrian 7, watching them with new understanding. The way the human ships scattered and reformed, the way they attacked from multiple vectors, the way they hunted damaged ships. These were not the tactics of a species learning to fight in space. These were ancient tactics refined over centuries, applied to a new environment. Show me more, she demanded. Show me everything. For the next 6 hours, Sarah walked her through Earth's naval history. Surface fleets that had fought across Earth's oceans, carrier groups that projected power across thousands of miles, wolf packs of submarines that had turned the tide of a war, missile cruisers that could strike targets beyond the horizon, every innovation, every tactic, every lesson learned in blood and salt water. We had to learn this, Sarah explained. Earth is one planet, but the oceans divided us. To project power, to protect trade, to survive, we needed to master naval warfare. And we're good at it, Ambassador. We've been doing it longer than we've been doing anything else except farming. Velnara watched recordings of Earth's naval battles. Ships moving in coordination, appearing from nowhere, striking and vanishing. The parallels to what she had seen at Hadrian 7 and Outpost Tarsus were undeniable. You brought 4 centuries of experience to space combat. You already knew how to fight in 3 dimensions. You already knew how to use terrain and stealth and pack tactics. Exactly. When other species see space, they see it as an extension of land warfare. Big armies meeting on big battlefields. But we see it as an ocean. The biggest ocean that ever existed. And we know how to fight on oceans. A horrible thought occurred to Velnara. Sarah, how many ships does Earth actually have? Sarah met her eyes calmly. You have access to our public registry, Ambassador. That is not an answer. The Third Fleet has 80 ships remaining after the battle at Outpost Tarsus. Earth has 16 other numbered fleets, each of similar size. We also have system defense forces, patrol groups, and reserve vessels. In total, about 1,400 combat ships, not counting support vessels, transports, or civilian militia. The room seemed to tilt. Velnara gripped the edge of her desk with all 4 arms. 1,400 ships. You told us you had 90 vessels total. No, Ambassador. We told you the Third Fleet had 87 vessels. The Council assumed that was our entire navy. We didn't correct that assumption because Admiral Voss wanted to prove what we could do before asking for a command position. It seemed more polite than showing up and demanding you put a human in charge of your military. In charge of... Velnara could not finish the sentence. She pulled up the battle reports again, seeing them in a new light. A tiny fleet, representing less than 6% of humanity's total military strength, had defeated 2 enemy fleets many times larger. What could the full human navy do? I need to call an emergency council session, Velnara said quietly. The council needs to know all of this. I'll inform Admiral Voss, Sarah said. She's been waiting for this conversation. The emergency session convened within hours. The council chamber was packed, with representatives from all 47 species present. Velnara stood at the central podium, and beside her stood Admiral Helena Voss, present via hologram from her flagship. Velnara began with a simple statement. The Council has been operating under incorrect assumptions about humanity's military capabilities. We believed their entire fleet consisted of approximately 90 vessels. This information was incomplete. The chamber filled with confused voices. Admiral Thexel spoke up. Ambassador, we have reviewed Earth's public registry. The numbers are clear. The registry listed Earth's Third Fleet, Admiral Voss said calmly. It did not list the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, or 17th fleets. It did not list our system defense forces. It did not list our reserve vessels. It did not list our civilian militia. Earth's total military numbers approximately 1,400 frontline combat vessels. Silence. Complete absolute silence. Then everyone tried to speak at once. Belnara raised her arms for quiet. Admiral Voss, why did you not inform the Council of this earlier? Because you would not have believed us, Ambassador. You looked at our small ships and saw weakness. If we had claimed to have 1,400 vessels, you would have assumed we were counting cargo haulers and patrol boats. So we showed you what one fleet could do. We let our actions speak for us. Your actions, a crystalline admiral said slowly, have included destroying nearly 2,000 Dominion ships while losing fewer than 50 of your own. If one fleet can do this, what could your full navy accomplish? That depends on how you use us, Admiral. We can't win this war alone. We don't have enough ships to hold all the critical systems, and we can't be everywhere at once. But we can teach you how we fight. We can show you our tactics. And if the Council is willing, we can coordinate a unified strategy. Admiral Thexel stood up. Ambassador Velnara, I move that we grant Admiral Voss the rank of Supreme Allied Commander, with full authority to coordinate Concordat and human forces. We have fought the Dominion for 2 years and lost ground every month. The humans have fought them for 2 battles and won both times. I do not care about pride or tradition. I care about survival. Let the humans lead. The vote was not unanimous. Some species objected to giving an outsider such authority. Some felt their honor was at stake. Some simply could not accept that their way of fighting was inferior. But the vote passed with enough support. Admiral Voss accepted with a simple nod. Thank you for your trust. I'll do my best to earn it. Now let's get to work. I need complete tactical assessments from every fleet commander. I need engineering specifications for all ship classes. And I need to know every asset we have available, including civilian vessels that can be converted to military use. What is your plan, Admiral? Velnara asked. We're going to stop playing defense. The Dominion has momentum because they've been advancing for 2 years without significant resistance. We're going to take that momentum away from them. We're going to hit their supply lines, their communication networks, their forward bases. We're going to make them fight on our terms, not theirs. And we're going to teach every ship captain in the Concordat how to fight the way Earth fights. And how is that? The crystalline admiral asked. Admiral Voss smiled, but it was not a warm expression. It was the smile of someone who had spent a lifetime studying war. We fight to win, not to be honorable, not to be fair, not to give the enemy a chance. We fight to win, and we use every advantage we have, and we don't apologize for it. The Dominion has been conquering species for 400 years because they're ruthless and efficient, while Earth has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We wrote the book on Ruthless and Efficient. Velnara felt something she had not felt since this war began. She felt hope. The briefing room aboard the UNS Defiant was packed with holographic projections of fleet commanders from 47 different species. Admiral Helena Voss stood at the center, looking at faces that ranged from skeptical to desperate. 3 weeks had passed since she had taken command of the Allied forces. 3 weeks of intensive training, reorganization, and planning. Now it was time to put all of that work to the test. Operation Earthbreaker begins in 72 hours, Voss announced. Our target is the Carveth system, the primary supply nexus for the Dominion's entire war effort. Every ship they send to the front lines passes through Carveth. Every resource they steal from conquered worlds gets processed there. Every command decision flows through their communication hub in that system. Take Carveth and we cut the head off the snake. Admiral Thexel studied the tactical display. The Dominion has 3,000 ships defending that system. Our combined fleet numbers 6,400 vessels. We have Concordat War College estimates a siege of Carveth would take 6 to 8 months, with catastrophic casualties. The Concordat War College thinks in terms of traditional warfare, Voss replied. Orbital bombardments, blockades, grinding attrition. That's not how we're going to do this. We're going to take Carveth in 72 hours. A Concordat admiral, a being of crystalline structure that pulsed with skeptical light, spoke up. Admiral Voss, I respect what you have accomplished, but this seems impossible. Even with human tactics, we cannot simply overwhelm such defenses in 3 days. You're right. We can't overwhelm them. Voss smiled. So we're not going to try. Commander Chen, bring up the operational plan. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Voss's chief of staff, activated a series of tactical displays. Operation Earthbreaker has 3 phases. Phase 1 is information warfare. We're going to hack every communication network the Dominion uses. We're going to feed them false intelligence about fleet movements, supply shortages, and internal rebellions. We're going to make them paranoid and confused. You can hack their secure networks? Someone asked doubtfully. We've been doing it for 3 weeks, Sarah replied. Humanity has been conducting cyber warfare since before we had spaceflight. We're very good at it. Right now, the Dominion Command thinks they have rebel uprisings in 3 different sectors. They've pulled ships from Karveth to respond. Ships that aren't coming back in time. Voss took over. Phase 2 is distributed assault. We're not going to mass our fleet and attack head-on. We're splitting into 200 task forces, each with 20 to 40 ships. These task forces will hit Karveth from every direction simultaneously. The Dominion will have to split their forces to respond, and split forces are vulnerable forces. And Phase 3? Thexul asked. Phase 3 is overwhelming firepower at decisive points. Once their fleet is scattered and confused, we concentrate our forces on their command ships and supply depots. We destroy their ability to coordinate a defense. Then we take the system. Voss's expression hardened. I'm not interested in a fair fight. I'm interested in winning. This operation will be fast, brutal, and decisive. The Dominion has been fighting honorable battles for 4 centuries. We're going to teach them what happens when honor meets efficiency. The fleet assembled at the staging point. A System 3 jumps from Karveth. 6,400 ships representing 47 species, organized into 200 task forces. It was the largest military operation in Concordat history. Admiral Thexul commanded one of the task forces, a mixed group of 30 human and Concordat vessels. His communications officer was a young human named Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Over the past 3 weeks, Thexul had learned to trust the humans even if he did not always understand them. Lieutenant Webb, explain to me again why we are not traveling in formation. Because formations are predictable, sir. The Dominion will expect us to arrive in a standard battle formation. Instead, each task force will arrive at a different point around Karveth, at slightly different times from different approach vectors. They won't know where to concentrate their defenses. It seems chaotic, Webb grinned. That's the point, sir. Chaos is our weapon. The Dominion likes order, hierarchy, predictable tactics. We're going to give them chaos and they won't know how to respond. The task forces jumped to Karveth in waves. Thexul's group arrived to find space already alive with battle. The Dominion fleet was trying to respond to attacks coming from a dozen directions at once. Their communications were jammed, their sensors were being spoofed by human electronic warfare, and their command structure was falling apart. Sir, we're detecting Dominion flagship Eternal Domination at coordinates 337, Webb reported. Admiral Voss is requesting all available task forces converge on that target. All available task forces? How many is that? 42, sir. 860 ships. Thexul felt his blood run cold. We are concentrating nearly 1/7 of our fleet on a single target. Yes, sir. Once we take out their flagship, their command structure collapses. Then they're just individual ships without coordination. It went against everything Thexul had learned about warfare. You did not risk so many ships on a single target. But he had learned to trust human tactics even when they seemed insane. Helm, set course for the flagship. Weapons, prepare for concentrated fire. 42 task forces moving from 42 different directions converged on the Eternal Domination. The Dominion flagship was massive, 15 kilometers of armor and weapons. Its shields could withstand bombardment from 100 ships. But it was not facing 100 ships. It was facing 860, all firing simultaneously from different angles. The flagship's shields lasted 40 seconds. Then the concentrated railgun fire, the torpedo salvos, the particle beams, and missile swarms all struck home. The Eternal Domination broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the system like a new sun. Flagship destrocations that should have made Karveth impregnable were methodically eliminated. Grand Admiral Vorketh watched from his command ship in an adjacent system as Karveth fell. He had retreated there after the disaster at Outpost Tarsus, waiting for reinforcements that would never come. Now he watched as the supply nexus that fed his entire war machine was torn apart by an enemy that fought without mercy or hesitation. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans, his communication officer said quietly. Admiral Voss appeared on his screen. She looked tired, as humans always did, but there was steel in her eyes. Grand Admiral Vorketh, I am authorized to offer terms of surrender on behalf of the Galactic Concordat. Terms? Vorketh spat the word. You expect the Dominion to surrender? I expect you to look at the tactical situation and accept reality. Was for those responsible for atrocities. In exchange, we guarantee the territorial integrity of your core systems and a place at the negotiating table. Vorketh felt rage boiling inside him. The Dominion had never surrendered. For 400 years they had conquered and destroyed. To accept defeat from these tiny humans, these newcomers who had been in space for barely a decade. But he looked at the tactical display, at the shattered remains of his fleet, at the red markers showing concordate and human forces advancing on every front. He looked at the recordings of human ships darting through his formations, human tactics that he still did not fully understand, human determination that seemed limitless. I need to consult with my government, he said finally. You have 72 hours, Voss replied. After that, we advance on your homeworld. I don't want to do that, Admiral. But I will if I must. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Vorketh sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of 4 centuries of conquest crushing down on him. They had thought themselves invincible. They had believed no one could stand against the Dominion's power. They had been wrong. 7 days later, the Dominion signed the peace treaty aboard the UNS Defiant. Vorketh stood across from Admiral Voss as both of them signed the documents that ended the war.
Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Crimson Station wasn't the kind of place you visited for the ambiance, unless your idea of ambiance included the smell of burnt ozone, recycled air that tasted like regret, and the constant hum of life support systems that sounded like they were one bad day away from giving up entirely. It was a trading hub perched on the edge of civilized space, the kind of location where questions weren't asked and answers weren't expected. Perfect for those who preferred their business conducted in the gray areas between legal and, well, less legal. The cantina occupied the station's central ring, a sprawling establishment that catered to every species with credits to spend and stories to tell. The lighting was dim, bioluminescent fixtures casting everything in shades of amber and red, credible variety of posterior configurations. In one corner, a group of methane breathers huddled in their environmental suits, their translators crackling with what might have been laughter or threats, hard to tell with that species. Near the entrance, a graviton merchant argued prices with the insectoid trader, whose mandibles clicked irritation with every counteroffer. And at the bar, nursing something amber in a glass that had seen better decades, sat Naomi. She didn't look like much, and that was entirely intentional. Medium height for a human, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing the kind of nondescript cargo jumpsuit that screamed, "I haul freight and mind my own business." Her face had that weathered quality of someone who'd spent too much time in recycled air and artificial gravity, with just enough lines around her eyes to suggest she'd seen things, done things, and had the good sense to not talk about most of them. She sipped her drink slowly, her eyes tracking the room with the casual awareness of someone who'd learned long ago that survival often depended on knowing where the exits were and who looked like trouble before they became your trouble. Cliff, the bartender, a stocky human with arms like cargo haulers and a cybernetic eye that glowed faint blue, wiped down the counter near her. "Quiet tonight, Naomi," he said, his voice carrying that particular rasp of someone who'd breathed too much station air without proper filters. Naomi replied, non-committal. "Give it time." Cliff chuckled, a sound like gravel in a mixer. "You've got that look. The one that says trouble's coming, and you're just waiting to see what flavor." Before Naomi could respond, the cantina's main entrance dilated open with a pneumatic hiss, and Trouble walked in wearing scales and swagger. Raxilon was hard to miss, which was undoubtedly his intention. He stood roughly 8 feet tall when fully upright, though he moved with that predatory crouch common to his species. The silicates were an old race, their bodies a fascinating fusion of crystalline structures and reptilian biology. His scales caught the light like faceted gems, ranging from deep emerald at his spine to lighter jade along his underbelly. His head was elongated, almost serpentine, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern that gave him nearly 360-degree vision. When he smiled, which he did often and unsettlingly, rows of translucent teeth caught the light like shards of glass. He wasn't alone. 3 other species flanked him, clearly hangers-on attracted to his obvious wealth and status. One was a pelton, short and furry with too many limbs. Another was some kind of avian species Naomi didn't immediately recognize. The third looked vaguely amphibious and seemed uncomfortable in the dry station air. But Raxilon commanded attention like a singularity commanded matter. He strode into the cantina as if he owned it, his movements deliberate and calculated to draw every eye. He wore minimal clothing, as was silicate custom, just a harness of what looked like genuine leather, studded with trophies, teeth, claws. What might have been a dried something. Naomi couldn't tell from this distance, and wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Drinks!" Raxilon's voice boomed through the cantina, his translator rendering his sibilant native language into booming galactic common. "Drinks for everyone who wants to hear about my latest conquest." There was a moment of hesitation, that peculiar silence that happens when a room collectively decides whether to humor someone or ignore them. Credits won out, as they usually did. Voices rose in acceptance, and Cliff found himself suddenly very busy, pouring drinks for patrons who'd materialized at the bar like opportunistic scavengers. Raxilon settled himself at a large table near the center of the room, his entourage arranging themselves around him like satellites. He accepted a tall vessel of something that bubbled ominously and downed half of it in one go. "You want to hear about real hunting?" he began, his voice carrying easily over the ambient noise. "Not your pathetic station-side pest control, not your sanitized safari worlds where the prey is drugged and tagged. I mean real hunting. Death world hunting." Naomi's eyebrow twitched slightly. Death world. That particular term had gained traction in galactic society over the past few generations, referring to planets where the native life was considered unreasonably hostile by civilized standards. High gravity, aggressive fauna, atmospheric compositions that required constant monitoring. The galaxy had hundreds of them, and most species considered them excellent places to avoid. "Chloris Prime," Raxilon continued, warming to his subject. "You know it? Acidic atmosphere. Everything with more teeth than sense? I tracked a spine render there for 6 planetary rotations. 6! Thing could spit venom that melted through combat armor. Got within striking distance twice. Sent 3 of my companions running for the shuttles." He laughed, a sound like rocks in a tumbler. "But I stayed, waited, understood its patterns. When it finally charged me, I put a plasma bolt right through its primary brain cluster. Took the skull as a trophy. It's mounted in my trophy room on Silex Station now." The crowd made appreciative noises. A few species that valued hunting prowess clicked or hummed approval. Naomi took another sip of her drink, her expression unchanged. Raxilon was just getting started. He launched into another story, this one about Mordaxis III, a high-gravity world where the apex predators had hides like composite armor and temperaments like malfunctioning fusion reactors. Then another about tracking something called a void swimmer through the rings of a gas giant, which sounded both impressive and potentially fabricated. But who was counting? The drinks kept flowing. Raxilon's voice got louder. His gestures got broader. His entourage laughed at all the right moments and made encouraging sounds when his stories reached their climaxes. "And then," Raxilon said, leaning forward conspiratorially, though his voice remained at a volume that suggested conspiracy wasn't really his strong suit, "there was Earth." Naomi's fingers tightened slightly on her glass. Cliff, cleaning glasses nearby, glanced at her. She didn't meet his eyes. "You've heard of it, yes?" Raxilon continued. "Death World Classification 9.3. Excessive oxygen levels, extreme temperature variations, tectonic instability, and native fauna that evolved in constant competition. The whole planet is a killing ground that somehow produced a sentient species insane enough to call it home." He laughed again. "I spent 2 lunar cycles there, hunting in what the locals call Afrika. The pronunciation is barbaric, but the hunting—" He kissed his clawed fingers in what was meant to be an expression of appreciation, but looked vaguely threatening. "I stalked a creature they call a leon," he said, mangling the pronunciation. "Apex predator of the grasslands. Beautiful animal, really. Powerful. Social hunter, which made it interesting. They work in groups, you understand, which means you have to account for multiple attack vectors. I managed to isolate a male from his pride, tracked him for 3 days through terrain that would have killed lesser hunters. When he finally turned to face me, I gave him an honorable death. Quick, clean. His mane is in my collection now." More approving sounds. Dorian, a scarred rimmer who'd been listening from a nearby table, raised his glass. "Impressive work, Raxilon. Earth fauna don't mess around." "No, they certainly don't," Raxilon agreed enthusiastically. "I also hunted one of their grizzly bear creatures. Massive things, easily 3 times my mass, with claws like mining equipment, and enough raw strength to tear through ship plating if properly motivated. Found one in a mountain region, forested area. Tracked it to its den. The fight?" He paused dramatically. "Well, let's just say I have the scars to prove it wasn't. Easy. But I prevailed. I always do." The Pelton in his entourage chirped something that the translator rendered as, "Because you're the greatest hunter in 3 sectors." Raxilon preened, his scales rippling with pleasure at the praise. "I wouldn't argue with that assessment," he said, with false modesty that fooled absolutely no one. Naomi set her glass down with a soft clink that somehow cut through the noise. She hadn't moved from her spot at the bar, hadn't said a word, but something in her stillness had begun to draw attention. Cliff noticed. Raxilon, with his predator's awareness, noticed too. "You there," Raxilon called out, his 4 eyes focusing on Naomi. "At the bar, the human female. You've been very quiet." Naomi slowly turned her head to look at him. Her expression was neutral, polite even, but there was something in her eyes that Cliff recognized from long experience. It was the look of someone hearing an excellent joke and deciding whether to share why it was funny. "Just listening," Naomi said, her voice calm and unremarkably pleasant. "You tell a good story." Raxilon's translator might have missed the subtle inflection on story, but several of the canteen's more perceptive patrons caught it. A few exchanged glances. This was either about to get interesting or violent. On Crimson Station, sometimes both. "A good story," Raxilon repeated, rising from his seat. He wasn't overtly threatening, not yet, but his posture had shifted into something more alert. "These aren't stories, human. These are accomplishments. Triumphs of skill and courage against the galaxy's most dangerous prey." "Right," Naomi said, taking another sip of her drink. "Dangerous prey." "You doubt me?" Raxilon moved closer, navigating between tables with fluid grace. Perhaps you think hunting is easy, that anyone could do what I've done? Didn't say that, Naomi replied. She swiveled her stool to face him more directly, still relaxed, still calm. I'm sure hunting those animals took skill, tracking, patience, understanding their behavior. I respect that. Raxalon seemed slightly mollified, though he remained alert for insult. Then what troubles you about my tales? Naomi seemed to consider this, rolling her glass between her palms. The cantina had gone quiet, everyone's attention now fixed on this exchange. Even the methane breathers had stopped their conversation, their suits' sensors aimed at the unfolding drama. Just curious about something, Naomi said finally. She looked up at Raxalon, meeting his four-eyed gaze without flinching. All these dangerous creatures you hunted, all these apex predators from death worlds across the galaxy. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried that same pleasant, conversational tone. Did any of them hunt you back? The question hung in the air like a suspended blade. Raxalon's scales rippled, confusion crossing his reptilian features. What kind of question is that? Of course they fought back. The Leon charged me. The spine render tried to melt my face off. That's what made them worthy. No, Naomi interrupted gently, shaking her head. I don't mean, did they fight back when cornered? I mean, she set down her glass and leaned forward slightly. Did they track you? Follow you back to your camp? Learn your patterns, your habits, your weaknesses? Did they make you the prey? Raxalon stared at her, his translator working overtime to process not just the words, but the implication behind them. That's not how hunting works, isn't it? Naomi's lips curved in something that might have been a smile, if smiles typically carried that much edge. See, I think maybe you've been playing a different game than you realized. You tracked them, sure. You studied them, learned their behaviors, found their vulnerabilities. Classic hunter methodology. But you were always the hunter in that scenario. You chose when to engage, where to engage, under what circumstances. You had the advantage of preparation, of initiative, of surprise. She stood up from her stool, and although she was considerably shorter than Raxalon, somehow she didn't seem small. So let me ask you again, legendary hunter. In all your conquests, in all your trophies and tales, did any of those creatures ever flip the script? Did any of them make you look over your shoulder? Did any of them invade your space, compromise your safety, make you wonder if you'd see another sunrise? Raxalon's claws flexed unconsciously. Apex predators don't get hunted. That's why they're apex predators. There's always something higher on the food chain, Naomi said softly, even if it's not immediately obvious. The cantina was dead silent now. Even the life support systems seemed to be holding their breath. Raxalon's pride, that magnificent and foolish thing, reared up like one of his trophies. You speak as if you know something of hunting, human, as if your soft species understands predation. We get by, Naomi said mildly. You're traders, merchants. You've spread across the galaxy not through strength but through commerce and diplomacy. Your kind avoids conflict when possible, negotiates when practical. Raxalon's voice carried dismissive certainty. No offense intended, but humans are hardly a warrior species. You're barely a generation removed from your death world, still learning to walk among the stars. Naomi nodded slowly, as if considering this assessment. That's fair. We are pretty new to galactic civilization. And you're right, we do prefer trade to conflict. When possible. Then perhaps you should leave discussions of hunting to those who actually participate in it, Raxilon said, turning back toward his table. No shame in recognizing your limitations. Tell you what, Naomi said, her voice stopping him mid-turn. Since you're so confident in your abilities, and since I've apparently offended you by questioning your impressive record, how about we settle this practically? Raxilon turned back, interest and suspicion warring on his features. Settle it how? A hunt, Naomi said simply. Traditional style, like you prefer. You and me. Neutral ground. We can set terms, make it interesting. The cantina erupted in murmurs. Cliff made a sound that might have been a protest or a prayer. Raxilon stared at Naomi as if she'd just suggested they go for a swim in hard vacuum, without suits. You're challenging me to a hunt? Raxilon's translator gave his voice notes of disbelief. You, a cargo hauler, are challenging me, a hunter who's brought down prey from 18 death worlds? That's what I'm doing, yes. Naomi's expression remained pleasant, almost friendly. Unless you think it wouldn't be sporting? Me being such a soft, non-warrior species and all. Hook, line, and sinker. Naomi could see it happening in real time. Raxilon's pride wouldn't let him back down from a challenge issued publicly, especially from someone he'd just dismissed as beneath his concern. If he refused, he'd look weak. If he accepted and won quickly, he'd cement his reputation. In his calculation, there was no scenario where he didn't come out ahead. Very well, Raxilon said, his scales brightening with anticipation. I accept your challenge, human. But we do this properly. Real stakes, real consequences. Agreed, Naomi said. What did you have in mind? Raxilon's 4 eyes gleamed. There's a moon near here. Outpost designation CR-88. Abandoned mining colony, harsh terrain, no sentient inhabitants. Perfect hunting ground. We each go there separately. You get a 12-hour head start to familiarize yourself with the terrain. Then I come for you. If you survive, let's say 3 full planetary rotations without me catching you, I'll publicly admit that humans are more than just soft traders. And if you catch me first, Naomi asked, your ship and cargo become mine. Raxilon smiled his unsettling, crystalline smile. Seems fair, yes? Your livelihood against my reputation. Naomi pretended to consider this, though Cliff could see the calculation in her eyes had been completed long before Raxilon made his offer. 3 rotations. I survive, you admit you were wrong about humans. You catch me, you get my ship. Deal. She extended her hand, a human gesture. Raxilon looked at it, then carefully wrapped his clawed hand around hers. His grip could have crushed her bones if he'd wanted. Hers remained steady and unconcerned. Deal, Raxilon said. We leave at next station dawn. Prepare yourself, human. I'll try to make your death quick and honorable. Appreciate that, Naomi said. She pulled her hand back and returned to her drink as if nothing significant had just happened. Raxilon returned to his table, already celebrating his impending victory with his entourage. The cantina gradually returned to its normal noise levels, though every conversation now included speculation about the upcoming hunt. Cliff leaned close to Naomi, his voice low. You've lost your mind. You know that, right? Raxilon's not just talk. He's actually dangerous. Naomi finished her drink and slid the glass across the bar for a refill. Probably. This isn't a game, Naomi. He's hunted creatures that would use you as a toothpick. I know. Then what are you doing? Naomi accepted the refilled glass and took a slow sip, her eyes distant, calculating. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet that Cliff's cybernetic ear had to filter out background noise to catch it. Teaching a lesson. The departure bay of Crimson Station buzzed with activity as ships cycled through their pre-flight sequences. Naomi stood beside her vessel, a compact cargo hauler that had seen better years, but still flew straight and true. The ship's name, painted in faded letters along the hull, read Wandering Fox. Phyllis, the dock supervisor, a heavy-set woman with neural implants that glowed faint purple, approached with a data pad. "Got your flight plan logged. CR-88, direct route, estimated transit time 6 hours. You sure about this, Naomi? Word's already spread through half the station about your little wager." "News travels fast," Naomi said, running through her external checks with practiced efficiency. "It does when someone challenges Raxilon to single combat on a dead moon." Phyllis crossed her arms. "Look, I've known you 3 years now. You've always struck me as someone with more sense than flash. This seems out of character." Naomi secured a cargo panel and turned to face the supervisor. "Sometimes the smart play looks stupid from the outside. And sometimes stupid is just stupid." "Fair point." Naomi climbed the loading ramp into her ship. "Keep my docking fees current. I'll be back in 5 days, maybe 6. "If you're back at all." Phyllis shook her head. "What's in your hold anyway? Last manifest showed you were hauling medical supplies to the outer colonies." "Still am. After this little detour." Naomi paused at the airlock. "Phyllis, do me a favor. If I don't come back, make sure those supplies get where they're going. Coordinates are in the ship's computer. Password is persistence." Phyllis's expression softened slightly. "You're really not coming back, are you?" "I'm coming with certainty." But lanes, joining the stream of vessels leaving Crimson Station. 3 docking berths away, Raxilon's ship prepared for departure. Where Naomi's vessel was practical and understated, his was a statement. The hunter's ship gleamed with polished metal plating, twice the size of the Wandering Fox, and bristling with sensor arrays. Its name, rendered in silicate glyphs that the station's translators converted to inevitable. Conclusion left little doubt about its owner's confidence. Raxilon stood in his cargo bay, surrounded by hunting equipment that represented the accumulated technology of a dozen species. Thermal imaging scanners capable of detecting body heat through 6 meters of solid rock. Energy nets that could immobilize prey 10 times his size. A collection of weapons ranging from traditional projectile firearms to cutting-edge plasma systems. And his favorite, a compound bow constructed from materials harvested from his previous kills. Each component a trophy in itself. His entourage fussed around him, checking equipment, offering advice, generally making themselves useful in the way that hangers-on do when they want to remain in favor. "This will be quick," Raxilon said, his confidence absolute. "A human cargo hauler playing at survival? I've tracked wounded spine renders through acid storms. I've hunted pack predators on worlds where the gravity would crush her bones. She has no idea what she's challenged." The Pelton chirped agreement. "Will you mount her ship as a trophy alongside the others?" "Perhaps," Raxilon mused, "though I think I'll sell it instead. Let it serve as a reminder that some games are best left to professionals." His ship departed an hour after Naomi's, following the same trajectory to CR-88. The moon hung in the darkness of space like a gray pearl, its surface scarred by failed mining operations and abandoned infrastructure. Atmosphere thin but breathable with standard rebreathers. Temperature range survivable with proper gear. Terrain varied enough to be interesting, but not so hostile as to be unreasonable. For Raxilon, it was perfect. For Naomi, it was adequate. The Wandering Fox entered orbit first, scanners mapping the surface with methodical precision. Naomi sat in her pilot's chair, studying the readouts with an intensity that would have surprised anyone who'd only known her as a quiet cargo hauler. Her fingers moved across the interface, tagging locations, plotting routes, building a mental map of the terrain below. Canyon systems in the northern hemisphere, abandoned mining facilities clustered around the equator, open plains in the south, where visibility extended for kilometers in every direction. Each feature assessed, categorized, ranked by tactical value. She descended to the surface without fanfare, selecting a landing site near one of the larger abandoned facilities. The ship touched down with barely a shudder, its landing gear adjusting to the uneven ground automatically. Naomi didn't rush. She spent the first hour of her 12-hour head start simply sitting in her ship, watching, listening, learning the rhythms of this place. Wind patterns, dust movement, the way shadows fell across the broken buildings. Then she began to work. Her cargo hold contained more than medical supplies. Beneath the legitimate freight, secured in hidden compartments that would pass casual inspection, but not thorough searches, was equipment of a different nature. Surveillance drones, no larger than insects, motion sensors, climbing gear, a rifle that looked civilian but had been modified far beyond civilian specifications, ration packs designed for extended operations, medical supplies beyond basic first aid, and in a small, locked case, a combat knife with a worn handle and a blade that had been sharpened so many times it was noticeably thinner than factory standard. Naomi loaded a pack with what she'd need, left what she wouldn't, and sealed the ship. The airlock hissed shut behind her, and she stood on the surface of CR-88, breathing recycled air through her rebreather, feeling the reduced gravity make every movement slightly easier than normal. She looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere up there, Raxalon was approaching, coming to hunt, coming to prove his superiority. Naomi smiled, a real smile this time, with genuine amusement. "Let's see how you like being the prey," she said to the empty landscape. Then she walked into the ruins, and the hunted became the hunter. Raxalon's ship touched down exactly 12 hours after Naomi's landing, as agreed. He emerged from the airlock with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. His hunting gear secured to his harness, his weapons checked and ready. The moon's thin atmosphere gave everything a slightly hazy quality, but his visual spectrum extended beyond human ranges. He could see perfectly well. His first action was to establish a base camp near his ship. Standard protocol. A hunter needed a secure location to return to, a place to rest and resupply between tracking sessions. He set up a portable shelter, activated its environmental controls, and arranged his equipment with methodical precision. Everything had its place. Everything served a purpose. Then he activated his tracking systems. The thermal scanner came online first, its display showing heat signatures across a 5-kilometer radius. He immediately picked up Naomi's trail, a series of footprints heading northeast toward the canyon systems. The prints were clear, obvious even, suggesting either panic or incompetence. Raxalon's scales rippled with satisfaction. This would be easier than he'd anticipated. He deployed 3 surveillance drones, each no larger than his fist, programmed to scout ahead and relay information back to his heads-up display. They launched with quiet efficiency, spreading out in a search pattern that would cover maximum ground while maintaining overlapping sensor ranges. Raxalon checked his weapons one final time, selected a mid-range plasma rifle as his primary, and set out following Naomi's trail. The terrain was exactly as his orbital scans had indicated. Rocky, uneven, scattered with debris from abandoned mining operations. The canyons ahead cut through the landscape like wounds, their depths shadowed and promising cover. Exactly where he'd go, if he were trying to hide. He moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator, his body low, his steps silent despite his size. The trail led him through a field of broken equipment, past a collapsed ore processor, and into the mouth of the first canyon. Naomi's footprints continued deeper into the canyon system, sometimes visible in the dust, sometimes marked by disturbed rocks or scraped surfaces. She was leaving a trail a juvenile could follow. Raxalon felt a twinge of disappointment. He'd hoped for more of a challenge. 6 hours into the hunt, his first drone went offline. The connection simply terminated. One moment it was transmitting normally, scanning a section of canyon 2 kilometers ahead. The next moment, nothing. No error message, no distress signal, just silence. Raxalon paused, studying the data. Equipment malfunction? Possible, but unlikely. His drones were military-grade, designed to operate in far harsher conditions than this moon offered. Collision with terrain? The last telemetry showed it flying through open air with no obstacles nearby. He filed it away as an anomaly and continued. 2 drones were sufficient for his purposes anyway. By the 10th hour, he'd penetrated deep, increasingly narrow passages. The walls rose high on either side, blocking his view of the sky, creating a claustrophobic environment that would favor the hunted over the hunter. Basic tactics would suggest this was a mistake. The heat signature was a portable heater, jury-rigged to produce human-level thermal output, positioned next to a bundle of clothing, arranged to vaguely resemble a sleeping form. He'd been had. Raxalon spun, but he returned to his base camp as night fell across the moon. Raxalon didn't sleep well that night. Every sound outside his shelter, every creak of settling metal, every whisper of wind across stone, brought him to full alert. His rifle stayed within arm's reach. His shelter's perimeter alarms were set to maximum sensitivity. Just before he had been there, a piece of paper, actually engaged directly. For the first time in his hunting career, Raxalon understood what his prey had felt in their final moments. Not the pain of death, but the terror of being outmaneuvered by something smarter, faster, more adaptable than themselves. And somewhere out there, Raxalon packed his equipment with shaking hands, his four eyes constantly scanning his surroundings. Every piece of gear that went instantly scanning his surroundings. Every piece of gear that went into storage felt like a small victory. 20 minutes. It felt like 20 hours. His ship sat exactly as he'd left it. 20 hours. His ship sat exactly as he'd left it. His rifle came up, targeting systems acquiring and locking on the figure sitting casually on his boarding ramp. Naomi sat with her back against the ship's hull. One leg stretched out, the other bent at the knee. She looked completely relaxed, as if she'd been waiting there for hours without a care in the galaxy. Her rebreather hung loose around her neck. Her clothes were dusty but intact. She showed no signs of the desperate survival struggle he'd imagined her enduring. If anything, she looked better than when they'd started. Rested, alert, in control. "You!" Raxalon's translator struggled with his... "How long have you been?" Dust on her jumpsuit. Dust on her jumpsuit. Of specialization. Every creature you hunted had someone who could hunt you back. Not the moment of death. But that species is protected. That species is protected. There are people who can the hunted without realizing it. Playing. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the whisper of wind across stone. Finally, Raxalon spoke. "What happens now?" "Now?" Naomi smiled, a genuine expression without edge or malice. "Now you go back to Crimson Station. You make good on our wager. You tell everyone that humans are more than soft traders, that maybe there's more to Death World species than you assumed. You take your damaged pride and you rebuild it, hopefully with a bit more wisdom than before. And you? I deliver my medical supplies to people who need them. Then I go back to hauling cargo and minding my own business. This was a teaching moment, Raxilon, not a vendetta. I don't want you dead. I want you educated. Raxilon looked at her for a long moment, this small human who'd systematically dismantled his worldview and left him fundamentally changed. I underestimated your species. Most people do, Naomi said. We're okay with that. Being underestimated is sometimes an advantage. She walked past him, heading toward the direction where her own ship was presumably landed. She paused at the edge of the landing pad and looked back. One more thing. Those trophies you collected, the Leon mane and the bear hide and all the rest, might want to think about donating them to conservation organizations or museums. Not because I'm telling you to, but because it might be good for your long-term health. Just a suggestion. Then she was gone, walking into the ruins with the same casual confidence she'd shown from the beginning. Raxilon stood alone beside his ship, watching her disappear. He was alive. He'd survived. But the hunter who'd arrived on this moon was gone, replaced by someone who understood, perhaps for the first time, that the galaxy was far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. He boarded his ship and lifted off, heading back to Crimson Station to fulfill his end of the bargain. It would be humiliating. It would damage his reputation. It might even end his hunting career entirely. But he was alive, and he was wiser. And he'd learned a lesson that no amount of successful hunts could have taught him. Sometimes, the most dangerous prey is the one that teaches you what it means to be hunted. And somewhere behind him, Naomi continued her walk back to the Wandering Fox, already planning her route to the outer colonies. She had medical supplies to deliver, after all. People were counting on her. The hunt was over. The lesson was complete. And humanity had proven, once again, that Deathworld species earned that classification for reasons that went far beyond simple physical danger.
The emergency session had been going for 312 years, which by Galactic Council standards meant they were just getting warmed up. Ambassador Thelrix of the Pulverian Collective sat in his designated hover seat, feeling every single one of his 417 years pressing down on his gelatinous form like gravitational debt. Before him, the central navigation dispute stretched across holographic displays in "17 dimensions, looking exactly as incomprehensible as it had in the year 2847, when this whole mess started. "Perhaps," suggested High Coordinator Veneth, her crystalline voice chiming like breaking glass, "we should reconvene in another century, allowing time for the Subcommittee on Hyperspace Lane Designations to consult with the Advisory Board for Stellar Cartography Disputes, who can then forward their findings to the—" "No!" The word came from somewhere Thelrix hadn't expected, namely his own mouth analog. 47 species turned their various sensory organs toward him. Structure flickered in what might have been surprise or possibly a software glitch. Hard to tell with her people. "Ambassador Thelrix," she said carefully, "did you just interrupt formal council proceedings?" Thelrix felt his cellular structure quiver. In 8,000 years of recorded Galactic Council history, no one had ever interrupted Veneth. There were protocols against it. 17 of them. He'd helped write 3. "I apologize," he managed, though his voice sac trembled, "but I've been looking at the same traffic pattern dispute since before my great-grandspawn were conceived, and I have come to a rather disturbing conclusion, which is We're idiots. The chamber fell silent. In the corner, a minor delegate from the Whisper Nebula fainted, which for his species meant briefly transforming into helium. Veneth's crystalline form pulsed dangerously. Ambassador, perhaps you need rest. We've spent 3 centuries, Thelrix continued, his voice rising in a way that would horrify him later, debating whether hyperspace route 7734b should shift 0.001 degrees galactic north. Do you know what's happened in that time? 41 civilizations have risen and fallen. The Krellian Empire collapsed. We're aware of the timeline, Ambassador. Then you're aware we're useless. Another silence. This one felt heavier, like the universe itself was holding its breath to see what happened next. Thelrix slumped in his hover seat. He'd done it now, violated protocols, shown emotion, raised his voice sac above conversational frequency. His political career was over, which was why he felt oddly liberated to continue. We need help, he said quietly. Real help. From someone who doesn't spend decades discussing the proper font size for hyperspace warning signs. Help from whom? Veneth asked, her tone suggesting she already regretted the question. I've been reviewing the newer species. There's one that joined the galactic community recently. They're supposed to be good with navigation. The humans? They have a primitive saying about cutting through something called a Gordian knot. I looked it up. Apparently, when faced with an impossibly complicated problem, we're not hiring barbarians. They're not barbarians, Thelrix protested, though he wasn't entirely sure. They've been spacefaring for almost 2 centuries. They have faster-than-light travel. They've colonized 6 systems, and according to my research, they're excellent at finding efficient routes. Based on what evidence? They invented something called a GPS, Global Positioning System. Every single one of their vehicles has navigation assistance. They take it very seriously. Veneth's crystal structure dimmed, which meant she was thinking, or possibly experiencing the crystalline equivalent of a migraine. Very well, she said finally. We'll send a formal request to Earth for technical advisors, discreet ones, perhaps 2 or 3 qualified individuals who can review our navigation proposals and offer educated consultation. Thelrix felt his cellular structure relax. Thank the void. A reasonable solution. If only he'd known that reasonable and human rarely appeared in the same sentence. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday, which was humanity's least favorite day, and therefore the perfect time for terrible decisions. Director Pamela Griggs of the Terran Diplomatic Corps read the incoming transmission 3 times, convinced it was a prank. The Galactic Council wanted human help with navigation? The same Galactic Council that had spent the last century and a half treating humanity like particularly clever children who'd accidentally learned to use the parents' computer. This is real, she asked her assistant. Verified through 7 different channels, ma'am. They want technical advisors for navigation consultation. 2 to 3 individuals, discreet, qualified. Pamela set down the tablet and stared at the ceiling, where a coffee stain from last month's budget meeting still hadn't been cleaned. The entire diplomatic corps ran on caffeine and spite, mostly spite. They'd been trying to get Earth a proper voice in galactic politics for decades, and now the Council wanted help. Get me Valdez, she said. Commissioner Valdez is in a meeting. I don't care if he's meeting with God himself. Get him on the line, now. 3 minutes later, Commissioner Rafael Valdez's face appeared on her screen, looking exactly as tired as she felt. Behind him, someone was yelling about requisition forms. This better be important, Griggs. The Galactic Council wants our help. Valdez blinked. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I think my translator malfunctioned. You heard correctly. Navigation assistance. They're stuck on some route planning issue. And they're asking US? The species they barely let speak at council sessions. Apparently, we have a reputation for being good at directions. Valdez started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that happened when the universe revealed itself to be even more absurd than previously documented. "Oh, this is perfect," he said, wiping his eyes. "They want navigation experts, real ones. That's what they're asking for. Pamela, do you know what I did before joining the diplomatic corps? You were military, weren't? I was a taxi driver in Buenos Aires for 12 years. Do you know what every single passenger did?" Pamela felt a smile forming. "Told you how to drive? Every single one. Even when I'd driven the same route for a decade, some guy who'd lived in the city for 3 weeks would lean over and say, 'No, you should take Avenida Corrientes.' And you know what? Sometimes they were right. Raphael, you want to send advisors to the Galactic Council. I'll give you advisors. I'll give you the most helpful, opinionated, absolutely convinced they know better advisors humanity has to offer." The council specifically requested discreet. Exactly. They want quiet experts who'll politely review their proposals and offer gentle suggestions. Well, we're going to give them something better. Pamela Griggs knew she should stop this, knew it with every fiber of her diplomatic training. But Earth had spent 150 years being patronized by species who thought humans were amusing novelties, and now they wanted help. "How many should we send?" she asked. They asked for 2 or 3. "Let's send 20. Valdez grinned. It was not a nice grin. It was the grin of someone who'd spent years being told to wait their turn, to follow protocols, to be patient. "I'll make the calls," he said. The first human to volunteer was Doris Cleghorn, 73 years old, retired from the Chicago Transit Authority with 40 years of experience and absolutely zero patience for inefficiency. When Valdez explained the situation, she'd asked exactly one question: do these aliens know how to read a map? The second was Giorgio Tambolini, former airline pilot who'd spent 30 years flying routes across Earth and had opinions about air traffic control. The third was Kenji Watanabe, who'd driven delivery trucks through Tokyo traffic and considered himself an expert on optimization. They kept volunteering. Yuki Henderson, who'd navigated supply ships through asteroid fields and thought hyperspace protocols sounded overcomplicated. Boris Kuznetsov, former Moscow metro driver who'd seen worse than galactic bureaucracy. Patricia Langford, who'd been a GPS systems engineer and was deeply offended by what she'd heard about galactic navigation standards. 20 humans, each absolutely convinced they could solve problems that had stymied the galaxy's finest minds for centuries, each with decades of experience in transportation, navigation, or simply knowing better than whoever was currently in charge. Valdez sent their names to Pamela with a note. "God help the Galactic Council." She forwarded the list without comment. The Council had asked for help. They were about to get it, whether they wanted it or not. The transport ship arrived at Galactic Council Station 14 on what the locals called a Harmony Day, which meant all 17 moons were aligned and bureaucratic efficiency was supposed to increase by 0.03%. Thelrix waited at the docking bay, having volunteered for greeting duty, mostly because no one else wanted it. The humans had seemed pleasant enough in preliminary communications. Professional, qualified. The airlock opened. 20 humans emerged, and Thelrix's cellular structure immediately began stress dividing. They were talking, all of them, simultaneously, not through official channels or translators, but just making noise at each other. "I'm telling you, Giorgio, the approach vector was all wrong. What do you know about approach vectors? I flew for 30 years. Commercial jets. I did asteroid mining." "Please!" An older female human pushed forward. "Can we not embarrass ourselves in the first 30 seconds? She turned to Thelrix and smiled in that peculiarly human way that showed teeth. Thelrix's species found it vaguely threatening, but he'd been briefed. "Ambassador Thelrix, I'm Doris Cleghorn, team coordinator." She gestured at the crowd behind her. "These are Earth's finest navigation specialists." Yes, welcome to Council Station 14. We've prepared accommodations. Accommodations can wait, interrupted one of the males. Giorgio, if Thelrix's memory served. We read the briefing materials on the flight. This hyperspace route dispute, the one you've been debating for 3 centuries. Yes, it's backwards. Thelrix blinked his primary ocular membrane. I'm sorry. The whole approach. You're trying to shift existing routes to accommodate new traffic patterns. That's insane. You should be creating new routes based on actual traffic data. We have traffic data, 17 million years worth. Exactly. This from a different human, Yuki Henderson, according to his badge. You're buried in data. Have you tried just looking at where ships actually want to go? The Council Subcommittee on Route Analysis has been examining... How many members? Excuse me? The committee? How many? 412 representatives from each member species, so approximately 19,000 individuals. Every single human stopped talking. They stared at Thelrix with identical expressions of horror. 19,000 people, Doris said slowly, are trying to decide on traffic routes. It's democratic representation. It's lunacy. Boris Kuznetsov stepped forward, his face reddening in a way Thelrix's briefing material suggested meant agitation. You cannot design navigation with 19,000 opinions. You need one good planner, maybe 2 assistants, and everyone else needs to shut up and let them work. But consensus is important. The consensus, Patricia Langford said flatly, is how you spend 300 years deciding nothing. Who's actually in charge of this mess? High Coordinator Veneth chairs the primary committee. Take us to her, now. I'm not sure that's... Now! Thelrix had been in diplomatic service for 73 years. He'd navigated delicate negotiations, handled first contact scenarios, and once successfully mediated a dispute between species who communicated through interpretive dance and species who considered movement to be offensive. He'd never been bullied before. It was remarkably effective. Follow me, he said weakly. High Coordinator Veneth was reviewing the latest subcommittee reports when her door burst open without the traditional 17 minutes of appointment notification. 20 humans poured into her office like a particularly aggressive fluid. High Coordinator! Thelrix rushed in behind them, his cellular structure quivering with distress. I apologize. They wouldn't. Are you in charge? Doris Cleghorn planted herself in front of Veneth's desk analog. Veneth's crystalline form flickered through several colors, settling on infrared, which indicated deep confusion. Yes, I am High Coordinator of Navigation Disputes. And you are? The people you asked for help. We're here to help, so let's start with the basics. Why is your primary hyperspace route inefficient? I beg your pardon? The main route, Route 7734B. According to your own data, which we read on the flight, it's operating at 68% optimal efficiency. Why? Veneth's structure brightened. Well, that's precisely what we've been attempting to determine. The subcommittee has 17 working theories, and we're currently in the process of... It curves, Giorgio interrupted. Silence. Excuse me, Veneth said. Your route. It curves through empty space for no reason. The curve was established in the Treaty of Harmonic Convergence, signed by all member species in the year. We don't care when it was established, Yuki cut in. Why does it curve? Because that's where the route goes. But why? What's the curve avoiding? Gravitational anomalies? Stellar hazards? Veneth's structure dimmed. Well, nothing currently. But there was a minor asteroid field there approximately 3 million years ago. 3 million years! All 20 humans shouted simultaneously. Thelrix actually felt his cellular structure begin emergency division protocols. You're still navigating around an obstacle, Patricia said with terrifying calmness, that stopped existing when Earth's hominids were just learning to walk upright. The treaty specified, forget the treaty! Boris slammed his hand on Veneth's desk, causing several important documents to scatter. Make the route straight. We can't just There are protocols. The treaty obligations alone would require 17 committees to... No. Doris's single word cut through the chaos like a knife through butter that didn't know it was supposed to be difficult to cut. No, Veneth repeated. No committees, no treaties, no protocols. You asked for help with navigation, and we're going to help you, but you need to listen. Can you do that? For 8,000 years, High Coordinator Veneth had maintained perfect diplomatic composure. She'd negotiated with species who considered lying a form of art. She'd mediated disputes between civilizations whose very concept of reality was incompatible. She'd never had anyone simply tell her no before. I suppose we could listen to your proposals. Finally, Kenji Watanabe pulled out a tablet. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to look at actual traffic patterns. We have traffic pattern data. You have historical data. We need current data, real time. Where are ships actually going right now? That information is collected by the Subcommittee on Traffic Monitoring, then forwarded to the Analysis Division, who compile reports every lunar cycle. Every lunar cycle. What if I told you that on Earth we monitor traffic in real time? Veneth's structure flickered. That seems excessive. It's normal. You can't manage traffic flow if you're looking at month-old data. That's like driving by looking in the rearview mirror. I don't understand that metaphor. Of course you don't. Giorgio threw his hands up. Show us your traffic monitoring systems, now. What followed was the most uncomfortable tour of Thelrix's life. The humans examined every system, every protocol, every committee structure, and with each discovery, their expressions grew more horrified. You have 17 different departments collecting the same data. Why are ships filing route plans through 18 separate bureaucracies? Who decided that hyperspace lane assignments should be determined by lottery? This isn't a navigation system. This is performance art about bureaucracy. By the third hour, Veneth's crystalline structure had dimmed to nearly invisible. Thelrix wished he could do the same. Perhaps, Veneth said weakly, you could provide written recommendations. We could submit them to the advisory board for... No boards, no submissions, no recommendations. Doris crossed her arms. We're going to fix this. Today. You can't fix 8,000 years of established procedure in one day. Watch us. What happened next would be debated in Galactic Council halls for generations. The humans simply started working. They didn't ask permission, didn't wait for committee approval, didn't follow protocols. Patricia accessed the traffic monitoring systems and changed them. Just modified 8,000 years of data collection because it was inefficient. Boris found the route filing system and deleted 17 redundant forms. When Veneth protested about proper procedure, he'd said, "What are they going to do? Fire us? We're volunteers." Yuki discovered that hyperspace lane assignments were indeed determined by lottery and laughed for 5 solid minutes before replacing the entire system with what he called common sense scheduling. But the lottery ensures fairness, Thelrix protested. The lottery ensures chaos. You don't assign critical infrastructure randomly. You assign it based on need. But how do we determine need without a committee to, you look at who needs it? It's not complicated. Except it was, or at least it had been, for millennia. By hour 7, Veneth sat in her office, watching holographic displays show systems being modified by 20 humans who seemed constitutionally incapable of respecting established authority. "They're destroying everything," she whispered. "They're fixing everything," Thelrix corrected, surprising himself. "How can you say that? They've violated 17,000 protocols." "Yes, and traffic through Sector 7 just improved by 12%. Veneth's structure brightened sharply. "What? Look." Thelrix pulled up the real-time data that Patricia had implemented. "Ships are moving faster. Waiting times are down. Route efficiency is... That's impossible. They've only been working for 7 hours." "Apparently," Thelric said slowly. When you remove 17 layers of bureaucracy, things move faster. But we need those layers. They ensure proper oversight. Do they? Or do they just ensure that nothing ever changes? Veneth didn't answer. She was staring at the displays, watching traffic flow improve in real time. In the main operations center, the humans had gathered every available staff member and were conducting what they called a training session, which seemed to primarily involve talking very loudly and asking uncomfortable questions. Why do you file route requests in triplicate? Because the regulations specify. Forget the regulations. What purpose does it serve? Well, one copy goes to the primary database, one to the archive, and one to... You're digitally stored. Why do you need 3 copies of digital data? That's how it's always been done. And that, Doris said with satisfaction, is the worst reason in the universe to keep doing something. A junior technician, a young Vrelian named Tik-Tik, raised one of her 7 tentacles hesitantly. Yes, Patricia said encouragingly. I've often thought the triplicate system was redundant, but I didn't want to violate protocol. There it is! Patricia turned to the others. Someone here has a brain. Tik-Tik, right? Yes, ma'am? Stop calling me ma'am. I'm Patricia. Here's what I want you to do. Make a list of every stupid, redundant procedure you can think of. Then we're going to get rid of all of them. But I can't just... Yes, you can. That's what we're here to teach you. If something is stupid, stop doing it. But the protocols were written by people who are dead. Do you want to spend your entire life following rules made by corpses, or do you want to actually fix things? Tik-Tik's skin flushed through several colors of excitement. I have so many ideas. Then let's hear them. What emerged over the next few hours was fascinating. Turns out thousands of council employees had known the systems were inefficient. They'd just never been given permission to say so. The humans gave them permission. More than that, they gave them something more radical. They told them it was okay to ignore stupid rules. But I'll get in trouble, one technician protested. With who? Boris demanded. Your supervisor? Bring them here. We'll explain. The oversight committee can kiss our collective asses, Giorgio finished. Sorry, is that translator working? Did that come through clearly? Several aliens made gestures that indicated shock. One made a gesture that indicated admiration. By hour 12, the operations center had transformed. Staff who'd spent centuries quietly following procedures were now openly questioning them, arguing about them, changing them. Veneth watched from her office, her crystalline structure flickering through emotions she didn't have names for. They're creating chaos, she said. They're creating initiative, Thelrix countered. When was the last time anyone in the operations center proposed a new idea? We have procedures for submitting proposals. That takes 17 years to review. These humans have been here 12 hours, and they've implemented more changes than we've made in 3 centuries. But what if the changes are wrong? What if they're right? Veneth didn't have an answer for that. In the operations center, Doris was addressing the gathered staff like a general rallying troops. Listen up. We've been here half a day, and we've already improved efficiency by 15%. But that's just the start. There's so much stupid here that we could fix. Redundant forms, unnecessary committees, routes that go around obstacles that don't exist anymore. We're going to burn it all down and rebuild it properly. But the council leadership, someone protested, doesn't have to know. We're advisors, remember? We're here to advise, and our advice is stop waiting for permission. That seems legally questionable, Tik-Tik ventured. Everything worth doing is legally questionable. Patricia grinned. The important question is, do you want to be right or do you want to follow the rules? Both? Tik-Tik suggested hopefully. Adorable. But no, sometimes you have to pick. And we're picking right. A senior administrator, his name unpronounceable by human mouths, spoke up. With respect, you've only been here 12 hours. You don't understand the complexity of... You're right, Doris interrupted. We don't understand your complexity. Because your complexity is artificial. You've spent so long making things complicated that you've forgotten simple solutions exist. But galactic governance requires people who get things done, not people who schedule meetings to discuss scheduling meetings. That's not what isn't it? How many committees are currently active? The administrator pulled up data. 7,412. And how many of those committees have actually completed their assigned tasks? Silence. Exactly. You have 7,000 committees doing nothing except creating more committees. It's committees all the way down. Well, guess what? Earth sent 20 humans who don't care about your committees, and we're going to fix this place whether you like it or not. The administrator's skin changed colors rapidly. You can't just ignore established governance structures. Watch us. And they did. Over the next several days, the humans expanded their assistance to every department they could access. The Route Planning Division discovered that humans had opinions about everything. Why is this route assigned a priority level 3? Because the Committee on Priority Assessment determined that's stupid. It should be a 5. Ships are waiting. Make it a 5. I can't just... Sure you can. Look. I'm doing it right now. Kenji tapped commands. Done. Priority 5. Was that so hard? But the proper procedure takes 6 months. Ships need routes today. Use your brain. The Safety Protocols Department met Yuki, who found their regulations adorably paranoid. You require 7 separate inspections before approving a new route. Safety is paramount. Safety is important. 7 inspections is paranoia. 3 is plenty. But regulations specify were written when your technology was worse. You've had 8,000 years of technological advancement. Update your safety protocols to match. That would require committee review. No, it requires someone with authority to say, these old rules are stupid. Do you have authority? Well, technically. Then use it. The most dramatic confrontation came in the Legal Compliance Office, where Patricia discovered something that made her go very quiet, which the other humans had learned was significantly more dangerous than when she yelled. Explain this to me, she said softly, holding up a data file. Very carefully. The Legal Compliance Officer, a being that resembled anxious fog, wavered nervously. That's the standard hyperspace liability waiver. It's 67,000 pages long. Ooh, well, yes, it covers all possible scenarios. No document needs to be 67,000 pages. The entire legal code of the Sol system is shorter than this. What is wrong with you people? We need to ensure comprehensive coverage. You need to ensure people can understand it. How long does it take to process one of these? Approximately 4 years. 4 years to sign a waiver? It's very thorough. It's insane. I'm rewriting this. You can't rewrite legal documents without... Watch me. By tomorrow this will be 5 pages maximum, and if your legal department doesn't like it, they can take it up with Earth's diplomatic corps. Who, I should mention, will tell them to go to hell. She stormed out. The legal compliance officer wavered in distress. Is she allowed to do that, he asked Thelrix, who'd been observing. I have no idea, Thelrix admitted, but I don't think she cares. By day 5, word of the human advisors had spread throughout Council Station 14. Reactions were mixed. Some departments welcomed them enthusiastically. Staff who'd been frustrated by bureaucracy for decades suddenly had allies who didn't care about making enemies. Other departments locked their doors and refused entry. The humans considered this a temporary setback. We'll convince them eventually, Doris said confidently, once they see results. And if they don't see results, Thelrix asked, then we'll make them see results by force if necessary. You can't force people to... Can't we? Watch this. She marched to the Transportation Scheduling Office, which had refused human assistance. The doors were locked. Doris knocked. No response. I know you're in there, she shouted. We're here to help. Go away, came a muffled voice. We don't need your chaos. Your department has a 6-month backlog on transport requests. That's within acceptable parameters. No, it's not. Open this door. The door remains sealed until proper authorization. Doris turned to Boris. Can you open this? Probably. Door locks haven't changed much in 8,000 years. Interesting that. He pulled out a small device. 30 seconds later, the door slid open. The transportation scheduling office staff stared in horror as 20 humans poured in. Hi, Doris smiled brightly. We're here to reduce your backlog. This is illegal entry, the department head shrieked. File a complaint. In the meantime, let's look at your scheduling algorithm. Who designed this mess? That algorithm has been in use for too long. It's terrible. Who here knows how to code? Several staff members raised appendages hesitantly. Great! We're going to teach you about something called optimization. It's going to blow your minds. 3 hours later, the Transportation Scheduling Office had a new algorithm that processed requests in real time instead of batching them monthly. The backlog dropped from 6 months to 6 hours. The department head stood in stunned silence, watching requests being processed faster than he'd ever seen. This is efficient? Doris suggested. Impossible. Our old system was designed by the finest minds, was designed 8,000 years ago, and nobody ever questioned it. Sometimes the finest minds are just the ones willing to say, this is stupid, let's try something new. But, no buts. Well, okay, one but. You're going to take credit for this improvement. Tell your supervisors you came up with it. We're just advisors. We're not here for glory. You're giving me credit? Sure, we don't care about credit. We care about fixing things. Now, which department should we invade next? By day 7, High Coordinator Veneth called an emergency meeting of senior leadership. Representatives from all 17 major departments crowded into the main conference chamber. Most looked worried, some looked excited, 2 looked terrified. We need to discuss the human advisors, Veneth began. We need to remove the human advisors, shouted the Director of Legal Compliance. They've violated 847 regulations. They've ignored protocol. They've rewritten legal documents without authorization and improved processing time by 73%, the Director of Operations added quietly. That's beside the point. Is it? Thelric surprised himself by speaking up. They've been here 1 week. In that week, they've made more improvements than we've made in 3 centuries. By ignoring every rule we have. Maybe, Thelric said slowly. Our rules are the problem. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Thelrix, Veneth said carefully, are you suggesting we abandon 8,000 years of established procedure? I'm suggesting that perhaps our established procedures have become more important to us than actual results. The humans don't care about rules. They care about solutions. And you know what? It's working. It's creating chaos. It's creating results. Show them the data. Reluctantly, the Director of Operations displayed station-wide efficiency metrics. Traffic processing, up 38%. Route planning, up 41%. Resource allocation, up 27%. Average wait times, down 52%. Staff morale, up 68%. Staff morale is up? Someone asked incredulously. Apparently, the Director of Operations said, people like getting things done. This is temporary, Legal Compliance insisted. Once the humans leave, what if we don't want them to leave? Someone ventured. Everyone turned to stare at the speaker. Tick-Tick, the young Vrelian technician who'd been working with Patricia. You can't be serious, Veneth said. Why not? They're helping. For the first time in my career, I feel like I'm actually making a difference instead of just processing forms. But the protocols, I don't care about protocols. Tick-Tick's skin flushed, deep purple with emotion. I care about doing my job, and the humans have shown me that my job doesn't have to be miserable. Several other junior staff members made gestures of agreement. This is unprecedented, Veneth said weakly. Good, Tick-Tick declared. I'm tired of precedent. Precedent is just a fancy word for doing the same stupid things forever because we're too scared to change. That's not. Yes, it is. And you know it. Everyone in this room knows it. We've built a system that values process over progress, procedure over results, and we've been too comfortable to admit it until 20 humans showed up and started breaking things. They're not breaking things, Thelric said. They're fixing what was already broken. By whose authority? Legal compliance demanded. By ours, Tick-Tick shot back, because we asked them here. We asked for help and they're helping. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you're the problem. The chamber erupted into arguments. Half the leadership wanted the humans gone immediately. The other half wanted them to stay forever. Nobody could agree on anything, which Thelric's reflected was exactly how they'd spent 3 centuries not solving the navigation dispute. While they argued, the humans were in the main operations center, teaching an impromptu class on how to tell your boss no. It's simple, Giorgio explained. When someone asks you to do something stupid, you say, no, that's stupid. But what if they're higher rank? A technician asked nervously. Doesn't matter. Stupid is stupid, regardless of rank. Actually, higher ranks tend to have more stupid ideas because nobody's told them no in years. I feel like this advice might get us terminated, another technician worried. Then you get terminated for being right instead of living your whole life being wrong. Which sounds better? The first one? Someone ventured. Exactly. Now let's talk about the concept of good enough. Who here has spent weeks perfecting something that only needed to be good enough? Every appendage in the room went up. Right, because you've been taught that everything needs to be perfect. But perfection is the enemy of done. Sometimes good enough is actually better than perfect, because good enough can be implemented today, while perfect takes 3 years. Patricia stood up. Here's the real secret. Most rules exist because someone, somewhere, screwed up once. Then instead of dealing with that one person, they made a rule that punishes everyone forever. Your job is to figure out which rules prevent actual problems and which rules just make you feel like you're preventing problems. How do we tell the difference? Tick-Tick asked. Easy. If removing the rule would create immediate danger, it's a real rule. If removing the rule would just make someone uncomfortable, it's bureaucracy disguised as safety. But what about no whatabouts? That's how bureaucracy wins. Someone says, what about this extremely unlikely scenario? And suddenly you need 17 committees. Stop it! A senior technician stood up hesitantly. I've been working here for 93 years. Everything you're saying contradicts everything I've been taught. Good, Boris grinned. Question, in 93 years, how many actual improvements have you implemented? The technician thought about it. Personally, 7, maybe 8. 7 improvements in 93 years? The review process takes time. The review process wastes time. You know what Earth's motto is? Move fast and break things. That sounds terrifying. It is terrifying. But you know what's more terrifying? Moving so slow that nothing ever changes. You die, your children die, your grandchildren die, and the same stupid rules are still in place because nobody had the guts to break them. The technician sat down slowly. I've wasted my life, haven't I? No, Patricia said quickly. You've survived in a broken system. That takes skill. But now you have a chance to fix that system. So stop surviving and start thriving. In the conference chamber, the argument had reached a stalemate. We cannot let this continue, legal compliance insisted. The humans must be removed. On what grounds? Operations countered. They were invited. They're fulfilling their advisory role. By ignoring every protocol, by improving every metric. Gentlemen, please, Veneth intervened. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. The humans clearly have valuable perspectives, but they also show concerning disregard for established procedure. What if we limited their activities to specific departments? They won't accept limits, Thelric said. I've worked with them all week. Humans don't do limited. They see a problem, they fix it. They don't ask permission. Then we'll make them ask permission. How? They're volunteers. We have no authority over them, and frankly, they don't seem to recognize authority anyway. Then we'll ask Earth to recall them and admit that we can't handle 20 civilians with opinions. You think that'll make us look better? Veneth's crystalline structure dimmed with stress. What do you suggest? Let them finish, Thelric said. They've committed to a full review of our navigation systems. It'll take maybe 3 more weeks. After that, they'll leave, and we can decide what to keep and what to roll back. 3 more weeks of chaos. 3 more weeks of progress. Look at the metrics. We're more efficient now than we've been in centuries. But at what cost? At the cost of our pride. Tick-Tick spoke up again. We're embarrassed that a species younger than our standard committee review period can solve problems we've been stuck on for millennia. But our embarrassment doesn't change the facts. This is highly irregular, Veneth said weakly. Everything about this situation is irregular. The humans are irregular. Their methods are irregular, but their results are undeniable. The Director of Operations nodded slowly. I agree with Ambassador Thelrix. Let them finish. Then we'll evaluate. I cannot support this decision, Legal Compliance stated. I'll be filing formal protests. File whatever you want, Operations shot back. While you're filing, I'll be running the most efficient station operations in Galactic Council history. Veneth looked around the chamber. Her carefully maintained political alliances were crumbling. Junior staff were openly defying senior leadership. Departments that had cooperated for millennia were taking opposing sides. The humans had been on station for 1 week, and they'd created more internal conflict than the last 3 border disputes combined. And yet, the station ran better. Very well, she said finally. 3 more weeks. But I want daily reports on their activities, all their activities. Agreed, Thelric said, relieved. And if they cause any actual damage, they won't. You seem very confident about that. I am, because despite their methods, they genuinely want to help. They're just very aggressive about helping. Back in operations, the humans had moved on to teaching what they called the art of the shortcut. Every system, Doris explained, has an official way to do things and a real way to do things. The official way follows all the rules. The real way gets things done. Your job is to learn both, use the real way, and only mention the official way when someone asks. That sounds unethical, someone worried. It's practical. Listen, if following every rule meant everything worked perfectly, you wouldn't have called us. But you did call us, which means your rules don't work. So stop treating them like sacred texts and start treating them like guidelines. But guidelines from WHO, from people who are dead and whose problems are solved. You're facing new problems. You need new solutions, and new solutions require breaking old rules. Kenji pulled up a holographic display. Look at this route filing process. According to official procedure, it takes 17 steps, but look, he highlighted several steps. These 5 steps are just different departments confirming the same information. Why? Because regulations specify. Forget regulations. What purpose do these redundant confirmations serve? Silence. Exactly, no purpose. They exist because someone 3,000 years ago didn't trust someone else, and instead of dealing with that one trust issue, they created a permanent process that wastes everyone's time forever. Well, guess what? We're deleting it. You can't just delete. Watch me! Kenji made several commands. Done. 5 steps gone. Now the process takes 12 steps instead of 17. But what if we needed those steps? Then we'll add them back. But we probably won't because they were useless. A technician stood up angrily. You're treating our entire system like it's broken. Because got back. You know it's broken. Everyone in this room knows it's broken. You've just been too polite to say it. Well, we're not polite. We're helpful. And sometimes being helpful means telling uncomfortable truths. Like what? Like the fact that your station could operate with half the staff if you eliminated redundant processes. Like the fact that most of your committees exist to justify their own existence. Like the fact that you've confused activity with productivity. That's true? Yeah, it is. And deep down you know it's true. That's why half this room is nodding right now, even while the other half is getting angry. The technician sat down, looking shaken. Patricia stepped forward, her voice gentler. Look, we're saying your system is bad. There's a difference. It is changing. Traffic increases every year. New species join constantly. Technology advances, and your procedures haven't kept pace. So what do? Someone asked quietly. You adapt. You question. You experiment. You fail sometimes and learn from it. You treat rules as tools instead of commandments. You prioritize results over process. An alarm blared. Everyone froze. What's that? Giorgio asked. Emergency alert, a technician said, pulling up displays. There's been an incident in Sector 12. Multiple ships reporting navigation failures. What kind of failures? They're receiving conflicting route data. Their navigation systems are showing 17 different optimal paths. Ships are having to navigate manually to avoid collisions. The operations center erupted into controlled chaos. Technicians rushed to stations. Senior staff started shouting orders. Doris grabbed the nearest supervisor. What's the procedure for this? We contact the Emergency Response Committee, who'll convene an emergency session to determine how long does that take. Usually about 6 hours to assemble. 6 hours? Ships could be dead in 6 hours. Who's in charge of navigation data distribution? That would be the Central Navigation Authority. Where are they? Level 7, Section C, but you need authorization to... Doris was already running. The other humans followed. Thelrix found himself running too, his cellular structure protesting the exertion. Behind him, several brave technicians followed as well, including Tick-Tick. They reached the Central Navigation Authority to find a scene of utter confusion. Technicians were arguing, displays showed cascading errors, and nobody seemed to be doing anything. What's the problem? Doris shouted over the noise. A senior authority officer turned, looking harassed. Who are... Oh, the human advisors. This isn't advisory territory. You're not handling it. Ships are in danger. What's causing the conflicting data? We don't know. The system started generating multiple route calculations simultaneously. Patricia pushed forward, examining displays. When did this start? Approximately 40 minutes ago. What changed 40 minutes ago? Nothing. We ran standard maintenance protocols. What maintenance protocols? The officer pulled up a log. Patricia read it, her face going very pale. Oh no! What? Doris demanded. They updated the routing algorithm. So? To the old version, the version they were using before we arrived. Silence. You're saying, Thelrix said slowly, that reverting to the previous algorithm caused this? Not exactly. The problem is that some systems updated and some didn't. So now the navigation network has systems running both algorithms and they're generating different answers. Ships are getting multiple conflicting routes because different parts of the network are telling them different things. Can we roll back the update? Boris asked. Yes, but that'll take... How long? 3 to 4 hours. Unacceptable! Ships are at risk now! Then what do you suggest? The officer shouted. We can't just... Yes, we can. Patricia was already at a terminal. We're going to force a network-wide update. Push the new algorithm to every system simultaneously. That's incredibly dangerous. If it fails, if we don't do it, ships crash, which is worse. But the procedures for emergency network updates require authorization from 7 different... We don't have time! Patricia started typing commands rapidly. I need someone with authority to approve this. Now! Everyone looked at the senior authority officer. He stared at Patricia, at the displays showing ships in danger, at the humans looking at him expectantly. He'd spent 40 years in the Central Navigation Authority, 40 years following procedures. Never once had he made an unauthorized decision. "Do it," he said. "Are you sure?" Patricia asked. "This violates about 800 regulations." "Do it!" Patricia's fingers flew across the interface. Behind her, Kenji and Yuki helped, routing commands through multiple systems simultaneously. "This is insane," a technician whispered to Tick-Tick. "If this fails, it could take down the entire navigation network. And if we do nothing, ships die." Tick-Tick whispered back. "Sometimes you have to choose between different kinds of risks." Pushing update in 3, 2, 1. "Now!" Patricia executed the command. Every display in the room flickered. For 5 seconds, that is. In Sector 12, ship captains reported that conflicting route data was resolving. Navigation systems were providing single, clear paths again. The crisis was over. The operations center erupted in cheers. The senior authority officer sat down heavily, his skin cycling through colors of shock and relief. We just violated every safety protocol we have and saved lives," Patricia said. "You made the right call. But the regulatory review will show that you responded appropriately to an emergency. Own it. You saw a crisis, assessed the situation, and made a command decision. That's what leaders do." "I'm not a leader. I'm an administrator." "Not anymore. You just became a leader. Congratulations. How does it feel?" The officer thought about it. "Terrifying." "Good. Leadership should be terrifying. It means you understand the stakes." She turned to the others. "Okay, now we need to figure out why the algorithm update failed. Kenji, already on it. Looks like someone in system maintenance wasn't informed about the changes we made. They ran standard protocols which reverted everything to baseline." "So this was a communication failure?" "Yep." Doris turned to Thelrix. "Do you have standard procedures for communicating system changes?" "Of course. There's a formal notification process that requires..." "Does it work in under 40 minutes?" "Well, no. The review period alone is 3 days. Then it's useless for him of making mistakes, afraid of taking responsibility, afraid of being blamed. This is insane." "No. Insane is spending 3